and welcome to those who are in the boardroom and those who may be watching us virtually. Welcome to the Board of Education regular board meeting, Tuesday, September 24th, 2024. Do we have any requests to speak on closed item? Hearing none, we will now adjourn to closed session. Thank you. Good evening. I'm going to call us back to the regular session. Good evening to those who are in the boardroom and those who are listening to us virtually. I want to call us to order, and now we will go to language access.
Thank you. We have Spanish interpretation available in person and on Zoom, and we also have ASL interpretation on Zoom. Buenas tardes, tenemos interpretación al español para los que gusten escuchar la reunión en español. Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you. Dr. Maldonado, please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand and face the flag. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now I have an announcement from closed session. In closed session, the board took action to approve the August 30th, 2024 final settlement agreement and general release between parents and Santa Barbara Unified School District for case 2024-25 SE01-JR, pursuant to which the district has agreed to fund, reimburse, or provide educational services to the student and the student's parents, have agreed to release claims against the district in exchange for the educational services as specified in the agreement. It was 4-0. Unanimous votes for this evening will be 4-0 as Mr. Escobedo will not be joining us tonight. Now we'll move to our student board member report. Eric, welcome. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Last Wednesday, with the help of Mr. Ramos, Dr. Maldonado, and Dr. Sheffield, we held this year's first Student Advisory Council meeting. I'm glad that many students from the high schools came and participated in our discussion. We got to know one another and went over topics such as hate speech prevention, concerns on rumored threats going around. The district and staff members reassured us about their investigations and gave us some resources that can help us prevent rumors through Crisis Go, telling a trusted adult by reporting it instead of reposting it. We also recapped last year's projects that aim to promote mental health resources to students and as well as preventing the dangers of trains in Santa Barbara. So thank you to everyone that attended that meeting. For Hispanic Heritage Month, we've seen activities throughout campuses like students showcasing the beautiful baile folklorico, celebrating the rich, colorful culture of Mexico through dancing, music, and decorations, as well as movie screenings that highlight the struggle and empowerment that Hispanics face in America. On top of that, I'm working with other students from all high schools to get together and create a video that gives students a chance to express their love and appreciation for their Hispanic culture and country. Clubs. Santa Barbara High School is preparing their club rush this Thursday. San Marcos had theirs last week, and Dos Pueblos had theirs earlier in the year. I'll be starting my 2 clubs and join other clubs because I think it's a great way to give students a way to connect with other students, and build long-lasting relationships in the community. And I'm always looking forward to making a new friend and giving someone a reason to smile. Lastly, I want to acknowledge the memorials at the high schools that honored the lives lost on September 11th, 2001. We will never forget our loved ones and our brave first responders. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you for your preparation and very well report and letting us know what's going on at the schools. Thank you so much. Next, we'll move to the superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. And I want to thank Eric because he really showed me how to run an effective meeting. We were done in an hour. All topics were discussed. All voices were heard, and we made decisions. So lots to learn from our student board member. I'd like to start today's superintendent report by sharing some of the completed work we had at Adams Elementary School. You can see here their beautiful brand new cafeteria that is finally completed. I know they've been working on it since last year. And it has a brand new ADA accessible ramp outside leading from the parking lot and sidewalk to the stage area. So we're really excited for these improvements at Adams Elementary, and we want to thank our bond and taxpayers for supporting with this work. Next, we also had at Adams, they are working on a Dia de los Muertos STEM project. I know that tonight you're going to hear about a resolution to acknowledge Hispanic Heritage Month in Santa Barbara Unified. And of course, I think everyone here knows almost 60% of the students in Santa Barbara Unified are of Latino Hispanic heritage. This elementary STEAM program is celebrating this month with the glowing Dia de los Muertos masks that they're making under the direction of Design Center teacher Sean Federbush. And we always celebrate Sean because he comes up with great projects. The mask project merges science, art, and history to provide students with a multi-pronged lesson that pays homage to the significance of this special month. The masks are set to be displayed at the school next month. Viva la ciencia. Next, I heard from teacher Shannon Hamilton. I have asked staff to share stories with me of the great things happening in Santa Barbara Unified. All stories are welcome. We really want to hear all the great celebrations. And Shannon heard my call to action and my request for these. And she sent me this post about Goleta Valley Junior High School. They are celebrating learning about the life of Major League Baseball player Roberto Clemente. He was a great baseball player and the first player from the Caribbean and Latin America to win a World Series as a starting position player, and is well known for his philanthropy and stellar character. The Roberto Clemente Award, which is created in his honor, is bestowed annually during Hispanic Heritage Month to the MLB player who best represents the game of baseball through extraordinary character, community involvement, philanthropy, and positive contributions, both on and off the field. Teacher Shannon Hamilton has woven this story into her lessons via these works of arts. And I want to thank her publicly for sharing those with us. And we get to enjoy them here tonight. I also want to share with you that this weekend I had an opportunity to do a little bit of coastal cleanup that was organized by Denise Alvarado, our executive director of elementary education. And we had about 20 people come out. I don't have a picture to show here yet. Or I didn't bring one, I should say, not yet. And we had some students, some parents come out and do community service hours. There is a prize for the most interesting trash find, and someone that joined us who's not part of our district, but still wanted to participate, found a heel, like a shoe. So that was kind of an interesting find, along with other items that many of us who walk along the beach or on the mesa probably find if we're looking for trash. And we know that that's going to help save our coast. So thank you to all those who came out. In the afternoon, because Denise likes to pack a full day, we participated in the library's event that you see here. They had a Raíces y Sueños is their theme, and they had a doll making workshop. You see 3 dolls there. I see Grace Vega in the back. If you could raise your hand, Grace. She works for us at McKinley. She's one of our counselors. And I will let you guys guess which one is mine, which one is Grace's, and which one is Denise's dolls. But it was really great to learn about the cultural significance of this doll making, which starts with the 1920s revolution in Mexico, and the fact that people couldn't really make toys for children during that time, and therefore these paper mache dolls came about. But they also had a connection to the fact that sometimes creating art provides lessons on resiliency and can be used for art therapy. So she wove all that through the workshop, and it was great to be out with community doing that work on Saturday afternoon. So I know that many of our art teachers think of art as the ability to have therapy, resilience, perseverance, historical, significant, and cultural attachments with any type of art that we do. So I really want to encourage you to participate in so many of the activities that are happening at the library. You can see here, there's a list of events throughout our community, and I encourage you to take part in them. We will send a note to all staff about them, the individual events as well in English and Spanish in our Flyer Fridays. Today, we had an opportunity to have teams of elementary staff working with a consultant on how to really refine the work of PLCs, otherwise known as professional learning communities. You're going to hear more about it today with Dr. Sheffield's presentation. So I'm not going to talk too much about that. I just want to thank the elementary teams that came, teachers, principals, coaches, assistant principals, and others. And a couple of points that the facilitator made that I want to share with the board. As you hear us talk about PLCs and professional learning communities, this is not new. You've heard it before. But one thing that he said was that these communities exist because their work is to come together to create better outcomes for students. And that's what the work was about today. And that we also need to look at setting goals so that we have results, not just setting goals for goals' sakes and putting them away for the end of the year. Tomorrow, the same thing will be done with secondary principals and their teams on this same topic. It was really inspiring for me to see the teams working together, defining the work of PLC, discussing SMART goals, and really just focusing on how they plan for student achievement. Last week, we also held a board member orientation for prospective board members. And on October 7th, the county superintendent, Susan Salcido, and her staff will be hosting a new board member legal workshop. So those who are interested in becoming board members, I encourage you to take advantage of that. So with that, I will conclude my superintendent report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Maldonado. I still want to know which dog was yours, so we can talk about that off record. Okay, with that, we'll move to public comment. Mr. Banning.
We have six public comments. One is virtual. Are we ready to start with the virtual? Okay, Connie Alexander. Okay,
Good evening. Can you hear me?
yes.
Oh, terrific. Hey, it's working tonight. Well, good evening. Connie Alexander, President, Santa Barbara NAACP. Greetings to the board, superintendent, and cabinet. A few things that are on our mind as we are in this part of the year for the NAACP. As we look at things, we would like to receive an update on where you are with the Black Student Affairs becoming a standing committee. We haven't heard anything in a while, and we would like to receive an update on that. It's been a few months at least, so we want to know what's going on there. We know many other districts have standing committees on Black Student Affairs. Oakland, for one, has an excellent example of this. We want to continue to support the work of the Anti-Blackness Committee. And we want to really uplift and acknowledge that this work is being done by a lot of community members. And so we are hoping to see greater communication between the community, the committee, and the administration this year. I think towards the end of last year, it felt like there was miscommunication and a lot of things that were someone else was doing it, but then this hand didn't know what that hand was doing. So we just want to see that process get to be not only transparent, but really honoring the amount of time that these people are giving, quite frankly, the time that they're giving to do this work. And also, it's on our mind that for our Black students and their parents, one of the reasons we feel like this standing committee becomes so essential is that every year we do not want to keep reinventing the wheel, starting all over again. We need some consistency. And I think the consistency at the board level as the boards transition from different people, because those seats might transition this year, we just would like to see some consistency in that. So we just want you to know that we may not be commenting at every meeting, but we are very much tracking and aware of things that are happening and what might not be happening. And so we just look forward to hearing the progress. And like I said, we really want to hear an update. So thank you.
Thank you. Next public speaker is Rick Lashua, followed by Karen McBride and Kim Tilton.
Good evening. I wanted to thank Mr. Escobedo for acknowledging my Regional Performing Arts Teacher of the Year award last month. From a pool of K through 12 music, theater, dance, and choir teachers from Cayama all the way down to Carpinteria, it's an honor I take seriously. And it's my sincere hope that I continue to faithfully represent this district and my Santa Barbara Junior High community. However, I've been faithfully coming here, not for attention, but for solutions. I thank the district for guidance in our junior high PLC meeting last week. We spent almost 2 hours deciding which California content standards we will focus on this year. I must confess, I'm stuck. There are 24 standards for junior high theater, and I only have 9 weeks to teach them. I suppose I could introduce, practice, and assess a new one every 2 days or so, but anyone who's ever spent time in a classroom will tell you that's grossly inadequate. Performing arts are a form of education that's the cumulative product of effort over days, months, and even years. We would never tell our football teams they can only practice 1 day a week and still expect good results on game day. We would never accept moving students on to the next grade after only 1 quarter of math or English. As a teacher, I'm disappointed we'd have such limited access to classes, particularly since our system makes participation difficult for EML, special education, and other disadvantaged students. Research tells us most adults say junior high was the time they seriously considered their vocations. Yet our most disadvantaged students are denied opportunities to explore paths toward adult lives that are better than their parents. As a parent, I'm frustrated. My son has enjoyed playing a musical instrument for 2 years in elementary school, but now as a 7th grader, he only has 9 weeks to advance, unless he signs up for a 0-period class. Those needing special services or English support don't even get that much. But as a teacher parent, the message from administration for the past 15 years is if I just build engaging programs, enough kids will enroll that we can continue to have them. This is clearly false. I'm the County Performing Arts Teacher of the Year, and my own son can't enroll in my class. This is breaking my heart. I've been in discussions for years, including speaking right here for 18 months straight, and I literally have less to show for it than when I started because I won an award for classes I don't even teach anymore because there's no room in the schedule. Please help me restore elective offerings during the junior high school day. Clamping down on intra-district transfers and restoring the 7th period are the simplest solutions, but they're not the only ones. Please help me. I need solutions, not attention.
Thank you. Next is Karen McBride, Kim Tilton, and Sammy Lambert.
Good evening. Bear with me while I'm mostly going to speak off the cuff here, but something came up in family discussion the other day, and I thought, you know, this is something I've been wanting to talk to the school board about for several years. So a lot of you know that I was the president of the Santa Barbara Teachers Association for 5 years and then went back into the classroom for a year. I have now retired, but am actively subbing, and I'm at a lot of different campuses. So I see the condition of classrooms and things, and in general, everything's great. But what I want to talk about tonight briefly is the safety issues that I see, and in particular, when it comes to the idea that an emergency could happen and kids would need to go into lockdown mode. I'm in classrooms all around the district that have no curtains in the room. They have curtains that are so torn and tattered that they have huge gaps between them. They have tinted windows that you can see through. And I personally think to myself when I'm standing in those classrooms, if there was an incident on campus and I had to go into lockdown mode, I wouldn't feel safe. Somebody could easily look through and target people. So there needs to be some uniform way to deal with this. Now, historically, when I was president, school safety was something that one particular administrator at the district level was on all the time. It was a topic that was, and some of you might remember this, it was prior to COVID. So it was when, school shootings were an issue that were on the top of our minds. And so it was addressed. And I feel like it's dropped off the agenda in the last several years. Maybe I'm missing some school board meetings, but I don't know. I feel like it needs to come back because the issue's still there and our schools have faced it. I was at San Marcos Hall last week and I was thinking to myself, why are 14, 15, 16 kids out in every class that I'm subbing? It's because of whatever issues were going on that were scaring these kids to come to classes. So we need to do better and we need to be uniform about it. It needs to happen at every campus, at every level. The other thing I want to say is that every sub needs to know what to do in the event of an emergency. That needs to be a consistent part of sub plans that substitute teachers get. I have the advantage of knowing, I'm going to just brag a little and say that at La Colina, they had the best emergency plan I've ever experienced at any job, bar none, whether it's a school or not. Everybody knew their role. Everybody knew what lane to stay in if there was an emergency, et cetera.
Okay.
Subs come onto campuses and they need to know at the very least, where to evacuate students to. And I go to some classes and I get great plans and I go to other classes and I get nothing. So maybe every campus needs to put together an emergency folder that lives in every teacher's room and every sub gets it with the materials that they get, the schedule and the
Karen,
class
we're gonna
roster.
have
Good,
to,
thank you
My
for
3
your-
minutes is up.
thank you
Okay,
for your
thank you.
thank you.
Kim Tilton, followed by Sammy Lambert and Maddie Bardowski.
Hi, good evening. My name's Kim Tilton. I work at San Marcos. I've been here for 12 years. We have a lot of issues facing our district. Teacher retention, big budget cuts. And the reality is they might seem like these really desperate situations, but from what I can tell, they're actually really connected. And for me, that's no better symbolized than a situation that's played out. So I have a new teacher at San Marcos, new hire, young guy. Starts the school year, August 15th. Beautiful room, floor to ceiling glass windows. Emails admin, hey, I'm a little concerned. If there was a lockdown, I don't have any curtains. Looks like there's curtains in here. What can we do? District comes by, we don't have the hooky things. We gotta hire the hooky things. And they come back and they installed the curtains. And this is them. These are the curtains that were installed in the it's honestly comfortable. They're tiny, tiny. I don't know who ever bought them. It's a giant waste of money. Because I don't know what they do. But that's what he got. And it's a long story, but he was told that there would be a resolution of this before the lockdown drill. But before that lockdown drill came, a real lockdown came. So I want you to imagine that you're a new teacher. The long bell goes off. And this one is interesting. I've had a lot of lockdowns. I've worked for the district for a long time. And the voice that came over was like exasperated. It was locks, lights, out of sight. And for 2 minutes, we sat there and I was frazzled. We were scared. And you're sitting there with those kids staring out a window. Locks, lights, out of sight is a district policy. And he could not enact it physically in his room. And he's supposed to stand there and tell kids that they're safe. They know they're not safe. So you can buy them an app that tracks them and has a teddy bear that asks them, do you feel safe? And you can tell the whole community that we're doing everything we can to make sure that kids are safe. But as a school board, you're trusting that that's just happening. But I'm here to tell you that it doesn't happen. Why is that not happening? And I just want to say this. You can say you care about school safety, and I believe that. but there's a social contract between me and a parent when their child comes to school. I'm the person physically responsible for them. But to me, this is just a symptom of a story that's played out where teachers are not the foundations of feedback, whether it's about curriculum or safety or school policies. There's a broken loop all the way from the classroom to the district office. And let me tell you, being a site admin is not any easier. You can be taking a knife from a student, getting a call from the sheriff about kids across the street getting drunk. Their jobs are so hard. The job of the district office is to create systems that allow for feedback and for action. Trust comes from action, action from feedback, my feedback, site admin feedback. And until that happens, which we've been asking for 5 years, crazy stuff like this is going to continue.
Thank you.
As the rest of it come up, we want to be mindful, make sure the people have their time. I know 3 minutes, you hear that things, we want to make sure we're keeping us proper. Yeah, 3 minutes, girl, for how long? You know, so, all right. So Bill's gonna help us out with that.
I'll begin with the 30-second reminder as it comes up.
Yeah.
Sammy Lambert.
Yeah.
And then Maddie Bardowski.
Good evening. My name is Sammy Lambert, and I am a chemistry teacher at San Marcos High School, where 2 weeks ago we experienced a brief lockdown due to a potential violent threat to our campus. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about that day and the day after. As my students and I were carrying out our lab during first period, the bell rang to indicate a lockdown. And luckily, I teach mostly sophomores, and so they were mostly prepared for how to carry out lockdown procedure. So we locked our doors, we closed our curtains, we hid silently. And like Kim said, we've been through lockdowns before, but the voice that came over the PA was not a reassuring voice like we have previously had in lockdowns. It was frightening. After transitioning to a hold, indicating there was no longer an immediate danger, the students were clearly rattled, as was I, and we had to hold it together. In my later class periods, my students wanted to talk about the procedures for a lockdown in my classroom and how they may differ from their other classes. It was the first thing on their mind, the first thing they wanted to talk about when they came in. Questions I got: what's the best place in this room to hide? What happens if I'm in the hall on the way to or from the bathroom? We're close to the parking lot. Should we run? These are, among others, all questions I had to field that day in an attempt to ease the absolutely terrifying anxiety of some of the kids, some of the anxiety that the kids were experiencing, all while feeling much of that same anxiety myself. This isn't the first time that I've had to answer questions like this. How often have you, members of the board, had to answer to a teenager's face these questions? Or how about to a room of 35 teenagers? I fully believe that in the event of a shooting at San Marcos, my closed classroom is a safe place to be, comparatively. It has the proper equipment to make it that way. So when I saw this answer to my colleague's request for better safety in their classroom, I was upset. No wonder we had a bunch of kids not come to school last week. No wonder I had a bunch of kids emailing me saying, I can't come, I don't feel safe, my parents don't feel safe having me there. They don't feel safe in a space that's supposed to be a safe place for them. How are they supposed to care about their learning when their safety is being threatened? I know my site admin has been made aware of this issue and a work order has been put in to fix those curtains, but what system of accountability is in place to make sure that these issues around safety are made a priority in this district? We received a myriad of different online professional development training at the start of the year, but none of them were about safety. Our first safety drill happened after a real lockdown 3 weeks into the school year. The kids were terrified. This all goes back to this lack of accountability. We were asked at the beginning of the year to fill out a form with safety materials needed to equip our
10
classrooms.
seconds.
So when I see this as the response, what I'm seeing is a total lack of care for both the needs of teachers and students, and the kids do see it too. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Maddie Bardowski.
Good evening. I'm here to speak to you tonight on behalf of my 5th grade class. You see, last week they saw those social media threats that were going around, and upon entry, I immediately could tell that they were making plans that they should never have to make or even consider. They were figuring out what they would do if these posts became a reality. I heard the whispers as they were trying to find the safest spot in the room. Some were even considering playing dead. Well, I reassured them that we were following safety protocols and that they were as safe as they could be. The lack of safety features in our room became very clear. We are in one of the brand new buildings, one you would think would be designed with safety in mind. And yet the design of this building quickly proved to be a hazard. There's only one door and the windows do not open. So there is only one way in and one way out. While two of the windows have blinds, there's one window that is uncovered that is 6 feet tall and 16.5 inches wide that gives a clear view straight into the entire classroom right next to the door. Given the reality that we currently live in, this is unacceptable. While we got through the day, the fears that they had were still present. The next day, a student came to me before school to specifically ask about that window next to the door. That's why I know the measurement, because we took them so that we could request a covering. But our window is far from the only exposed window on our campus. Others have had work orders in for blinds or curtains for some time, and nothing has been done. This is now something that students are noticing as being a hazard. I request that you ensure that windows across the district have proper coverings so that all students can feel safe. And so that rather than focusing on plans for survival, my students can focus on relating fractions to division and summarizing stories with evidence and elaboration, which were what were supposed to be the learning targets of that day. Thank you.
Thank you. No other public comments?
Please.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. I know that Dr. Maldonado is taking copious notes as admin staff looking at this and how we're going to address this. Thank you for speaking before us this evening. So next we'll move to D. Now, did you want
No, it's fine.
you good? Okay. So we'll move to E1, acceptance of donations for September 24th, 2024. May I have a motion to approve?
I move to accept the donations for September 24, 2024 with
Aye.
gratitude.
I second.
Okay, been motion and second. All in favor, please raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We'll move to the consent agenda. Board members or superintendent, are there any items you'd like to pull from the consent agenda for further discussion? So hearing no request to pull, may I have a motion for approval?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Been motion and second. All in favor, please raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. We will now move to our action agenda. G1, approval of human resources recommendation. Dr. Becchio.
Thank you and good evening, Board President Sims Moten, board members, Superintendent Maldonado. I bring to you this board meeting's recommendation list from Human Resources. Want to point out a couple items. In particular, we have some retirements, and I just wanted to publicly acknowledge those retirements from the certificated staff, teacher Terry Ingram, and speech and language pathologist Judith Torres, and also from our ETS staff, Clifford Gill. So congratulations to them, and we thank them for their service. I also wanted to point out that Amy McMillan is on this list, a national board certified teacher who is receiving the California Department of Ed incentive of $5,000. So it is on this board list for you to approve. That comes from the California Department of Ed. And we have very few national board certified teachers in our district. So Amy is one of them, and she's very highly skilled, and she is our library teacher at San Marcos High School. And with that, I'll turn it over to you for any questions or considerations you might have.
Are there any requests to speak on this item? Mr. Banning?
No requests.
Board members' comments or questions? Hearing no comments or questions, may I have a motion for approval?
I move to approve the human resources recommendations. I second.
Been motion and second. All in favor, please raise your hands and say aye.
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 Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Becchio. I know number 2 is for you as well. G2, approval of the 2025-26 school year calendar.
Thank you very much. So I bring this item before you. This is for, again, the 25-26 school year calendar. This was part of our negotiations this year. We focused on several key items, the SBTA team and the SB Unified team. One was the ending first semester prior to winter break. We had heard for several years, actually, we've heard some chatter from, in particular, high schools about ending the first semester to coincide with the beginning of winter break, so in December. So we focused on that in some of our surveying. We also focused on the length of winter break. Once again, that was a popular topic. And then also the starting of school and whether that was on a Monday or midweek. That was kind of an important point that the teams discussed and that we surveyed about as well. We included this year in our surveying, we included teachers and other certificated staff. So SBTA sent out those surveys. We also polled all of management, all our elementary families, all our secondary families, and then our classified staff. I also met with the area district superintendents, so all of our neighboring districts. I got input from them that was interesting, but anyways, nonetheless, they were included in my reaching out for input. I want to also extend a huge thank you to the SBTA team, Osby Galindo, Magda Barnes Mubarak, Madeline Bardovsky, and Kim Tilton, all of whom are here tonight, I believe. Was there anyone else that I missed? Okay. It was just a really good several sessions of negotiation around the calendar, very collaborative work. A special thanks to the SBTA team for bringing forward ideas. It was quite a smooth process where they brought forward ideas and then we looked at them to see if they were viable calendars for us. And then we went out and surveyed. I also special thanks to Kim Tilton around the data that was collected. She brought forward a very great idea of doing ranked choice surveying, which really helped us understand what people would want if their first choice didn't get selected. So we were able to analyze the data that way. And so a big thank you to her for that. In the end, this calendar far and away among all groups was the most popular calendar, and therefore both teams agreed that we would bring this forward to the board for approval. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Any requests to speak on this item?
No request to speak.
Board members' comments or questions?
I would just like to say that something that appears to be such a simple task isn't. My experience in education has been such that this can be a very daunting and difficult task. And I'm pleased to hear the process and I was interested in seeing the data and hearing the good outcomes and the process of the meeting to get to a resolution. I appreciate it. Thank you to all that participated, those that are here and those that aren't.
Okay, with that, may I have a motion for approval?
I move to approve the 25-26 calendar.
I second.
Been motion and second. All in favor, please raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Dr. Vecchio. Next, we're moving to G3, approval of the annual report of teacher assignments and resolution number 2024-25/12. Ms. Peak.
Good evening, Board President Sims Moten, Board of Education, and Dr. Maldonado. I am here this evening to request approval of the annual report on teacher assignments and resolution 24-25-12. As you know, a teacher must have the appropriate credentials as issued by the Commission on Teacher Credentialing in order to teach. There are a variety of ways this can be accomplished. The item before you supports one of those options known as local assignment options. This option allows teachers to teach outside their base credential if they meet the requirements of various education codes and Title V regulations. This option allows for flexibility at the local level and is used solely at the discretion of the district. After a thorough review of the junior high and high school master schedules, it's been determined that particular teachers can teach under the education code or Title V regulations as described on the item before you. Board approval is required annually. We are asking this evening for approval of Resolution 2425-12. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Peak. Any requests to speak on this item?
No.
Hearing none. Board members, any comments or questions? Hearing none. Thank you, Ms. Peak. May I have a motion for approval?
I move to approve the teacher assignments in resolution number 2024-25/12.
I'll second the motion.
Motion been second, moved in second. All in favor, please raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Ms. Peak. We're new to G4, approval of purchase of Lexia's language essentials for teachers in reading and spelling for early childhood materials related professional development, education services. Who's speaking to us this evening?
Dr. Sheffield or Denise? Who's coming?
Good evening. As you may know, we have utilized letters to support our curriculum adoption, and we are in the process of continuing our professional learning with our teachers. Last year, we started a cohort of about 40 teachers as well as coaches. And also last year, we continued with a different professional learning that is not as intensive and that it took 1 year for us to complete with our TK teachers. And so we have trained all TK teachers last year. This year, we want to focus on our preschool teachers so that we can provide that professional learning for support for our youngest learners. So we are requesting for us to adopt or to provide this professional learning for all of our TK teachers, as well as any other new teachers to the young grade levels, such as TK and K, who are new to our district as well. And if you want to scroll to the agenda real quick. To the board memo, excuse me. Our teachers have shared with us that the letters training was very supportive in providing that professional learning that is not just about a curriculum that is given to them. It's not materials, it's actually knowledge that the teachers are gaining through that professional learning. And I just want to get the right amount for the professional learning that we're requesting at the very bottom. And it's for them to gain knowledge, the bottom of that board memo. Yeah, towards the bottom. Is there more?
It's in the quote.
It's in the quote.
There it is. So
Were you looking for something else?
this is the fiscal impact for this. Sorry, I was confused with the information that was on there. Fiscal impact for the letters training, and this would be for up to 40 professionals, 40 educators, would be funded through Title II. And our recommendation is to go ahead and approve the purchase of Lexia's Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading Letters, as it's known, for early childhood materials and related professional learning that will be done during the school day for teachers. Any questions?
Yes. Is there any request to speak on this item?
No
Board
request.
members, any comments or questions?
Yes.
Ms. Bill?
Oh, I guess there is a request.
Oh, okay.
Two requests on G4, Andrew Salzman and John Cole.
Hi, I'm from the Santa Barbara Reading Coalition, distinguished members. Thank
Your
you.
speaker needs to turn your mic on there, please.
Is there a button for that?
Yes, it should be
Push.
right there. Is it green? No.
Is the light, green light on?
Denise, can you help him there? There
got
you
the
go.
You got the magic touch there. Hi. I'm from the Santa Barbara Reading Coalition. It's good to see you all again. As far as the letters education for the pre-K students, I personally would shell out $23,000 to get that kind of training in place. Frankly, we should be doing letters-based training for pre-K through the third grade, if it's not already planned for or in place, simply because there's two kinds of training, as you know, right? One is the curriculum, and the other is, curriculum is like how you develop skills in reading. And then there's the why. What's the neuroscience? What's the reasoning behind teaching a certain way, teaching the science of reading? So very happy to see that in place and applaud the district for hopefully approving that recommendation. Wanted to mention, as far as our group goes, just to remind who we are retired business leaders, former CEOs, including Miguel Avila from the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, also academicians, city council members, et cetera. So we've spent a lot of time studying the various issues. And one of the things I wanted to mention, it pains me to do this, but I'm going to do it. The last time I spoke on literacy, I was disappointed at the reaction that I got to the comments that were made. What I've heard from the board has been a strong desire for the community to want to hear, or for the board to want to hear from the community what they think about various issues. And I recall the reactions around literacy when we talked about that was, I'm not going to single out an individual here, but I'm going to say, having 30 plus years of academic experience, knowing what works, we get lots of ideas from the outside. Thank you for giving us lots of ideas. The reason we exist is the reason that you exist. And that is, our goal is to get 90% reading proficiency for every kid. I remember Denise in one of her slides mentioned she wants every kid. She wants 100%. We're being modest, I guess, at 90. But what we bring is proven best practices. We work with people who also have 30 plus years of experience on this topic, who have effectively made the transition to a science of reading based approach and have solved the implementation gap, albeit with bumps along the road. So when we come to this group, we're not looking for a defensive reaction or an insular reaction. We're looking for a participative and collaborative reaction towards a common goal. No more and no less. So as you get further into this, I'm not sure what my time is, 12 seconds. On the topic of PLCs, one great example would be, we learn a lot when we talk to each other, all these different groups that come together, but there are other organizations, other PLCs that could probably impart knowledge that maybe we don't have within our own district, such as in East Palo Alto. So we'd recommend that we be collaborative, outside in, inside out, and work together to make it happen. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. And Jim, no.
I'm John Cooey.
John Cooey.
I taught developmental psychology at Duke University, and my research is in the prevention of violence among children at risk. And one of the things I learned as I spent a lot of time in the North Carolina schools is that success in school is a critical factor in these kids going the right direction, finding useful employment, and not becoming involved in serious violence. One of the things that I then realized was that learning to read was probably the single most important factor in these children being successful in school. So I trained probably upwards of 200 Duke students to tutor children in the elementary schools. I learned a great deal about how these children learn about learning to read. And when I got here to Santa Barbara, I became part of a group that had been asked by Superintendent Sarvis way back in the early 2000s to help with the problem of about 2/3 of the children, 60% of the children moving from preschool into kindergarten were failing the reading proficiency readiness test. I spent time in the schools looking what was there and was told very quickly that the district owned a computer-based reading program that had been given to the school district by the owners of Kinko's, but it wasn't being used for very much. I sat down at Cleveland School on that computer and pretended I was a 4-year-old who didn't know anything And before long, I realized this computer does tutoring and reading a lot better than I could ever do college students. So we got money from the Santa Barbara Education Foundation to put more than 40 computers in the preschool classrooms in the school district. Within 2 years, in the 5 lowest achieving elementary schools in Santa Barbara, we had gotten the children to where their proficiency level was over 80% on average across those 5 schools. That was an amazing thing to happen. Now to find out that things have pretty much drifted way back where they were when we got started, I've been wondering whether it might not be appropriate to speak about the importance of bringing back computer-based training in reading into the preschools, because developmental science, neurological science, has demonstrated that probably the most important time for children to begin to learn about phonics, which is the code that links printed symbols with written, with speech in English, is when they're in preschool and kindergarten. And what we would
15
like to
seconds.
what we'd
15
like to
seconds.
pardon?
15 seconds.
What we'd like to suggest is bringing back that original program, getting it into the preschools, and see if we can turn the whole program around, where our goal would not be just 70%, but we would get it up over 90%, because the children would be understanding phonics when they enter kindergarten.
Thank you for your comments. No other comments for this item.
Board members, any comments or questions? Ms. Bill?
I have been thinking about literacy for some time, even before I joined the board, and have needed to educate myself. This is actually 2.5 years ago when the district decided to adopt the curriculum, and have been following it along. And maybe to reflect a little bit of the comments that we heard tonight, you know, as everybody may or may not know, there is the curriculum, and then there's the paradigm. And the paradigm might be basically what we call in this district structured literacy, science of reading. And the Lexia Corporation has Letters and Aspire, which are based upon this structured science of reading. There are other things. And so in thinking about that and looking at what the district has done, I'm very pleased to hear that the TK and the preschool teachers are going to be trained in the paradigm. And then there's a curriculum. And from what I have understood from the presentations that have happened over the last several months, is we are doing training using the curriculum. And the thoughts that I've had about that, and often I have to kind of look at my own learning because I'm not a trained educator, and it's the idea of foundational training. And so I've been thinking about this for the past week, and I was thinking about the fact that I'm a physician. And one of the things I do is I prescribe medication. So in medical school, I had a course in pharmacology. Boy, did I hate that course. It was math, it was physics, it was, you know, all chemistry, my organic chemistry all in one, the hardest classes as a pre-med student I had. And here I was a medical student, I'm understanding how drugs are metabolized through the system, through the liver, through the kidney, there's enzymes within the liver. Now I've been practicing for 30+ years. And one of the things I realize about my foundational training in pharmacology is you can bring me any drug and anybody can say, the drug representative can say, this drug does this, and I could just memorize that fact. There's thousands of drugs out there. But because I have that foundational training, when a new drug comes into my menu and I have to prescribe it to somebody, I can look at that medication, I can look at their other medication, and I understand very quickly what the interactions, how long it takes to get out of the system. I have that foundational training. So this is a brain thing. So what I would like to discuss or ask the district to think about over the next couple of months is we have another agenda item that talks about the implementation, our student achievement and success, is how are we giving foundational training to our teachers? The other thing that I've been thinking about and I've learned, and I was actually at Peabody School with Steve Venz recently to talk about their success in their literacy curriculum, is how they approach their foundational training. So I learned a couple of interesting facts. The first one is to learn the letters paradigm is intensive. It is fewer hours for people who are a little higher up without direct contact, but it is still a good 60 to 80 hours. For a teacher who has direct contact with students, it's around 160 hours, and it's over 2 years. So this is intense. This is not easy. Teacher training, that's the other thing I learned in California, is not quite 2 years. And so it is difficult to incorporate this in their curriculum because of the length of training. So there can be partial training. And right now it's not part of the California teacher standards. So it really is something that we have to do it as a district if we want to incorporate that paradigm or something similar within our literacy system. And we are going to get some results in October to see if we are advancing. And I do think if we teach the curriculum, we will have some advances. But if literacy is our goal, and if is that something that we are set on improving all across the district, we are going to have bigger advances if we invest in the foundational training. So what I'm interested in hearing over like I said, the next couple of meetings as we discuss literacy, and we are committed to doing that this year, is how we can advance our foundational training to be, I think you talked about kindergarten teachers have the option, right? So if we were to train, how many kindergarten teachers do we have? How many first, second, third? How much would it cost? And the cost isn't just the foundational training, but also the hours, because I think with this intensity, this would have to be training that is done in the summer before teachers even start school. So I think I'd like to see the bigger picture, but I do think that foundational training, just as it was important for me, this is something we have to invest in, especially since the foundational training has been different up until we adopted this paradigm. And it's a brain thing, it's a neuroscience thing. And so we have to change some foundational training, and we have to start our newer teachers with a foundational training. And once we have it in the system, I think we can keep it alive. But I think it's maybe swimming a little bit against the current if we don't do that, and our gains will be slow. So that would be my request of the district.
Dr. Beal, I'm glad that you brought that up about foundational, and that is exactly what we did starting 2 years ago. So we started with a cohort. We cannot mandate teachers to attend the training. It is optional. Peabody was able to do it differently because they requested all their teachers and they required them. It's a different situation there. For our school district, we have over 200 teachers who we can't just ask all teachers, you will stay after school and work on Saturdays to do this training all day, which is 6 hours, multiple Saturdays throughout the year for 2 years, and you'll get paid. And so what we did instead is we offered it as an optional opportunity. We explained to teachers exactly what it would take, that it would be Saturdays, it would be outside work, lots of reading, a 2-year commitment, and about 40 teachers and coaches signed up for this opportunity on their own. And so we knew that we had a challenge that we can't just ask and mandate every teacher to do this. So as a result, we went with a different route. And so about 40 teachers signed up. They just completed this at the end of this summer. That cohort completed the 2-year program. So that's how we started. And we had every single school represented in that group. So that's how we are starting with the foundational work throughout the entire district. Also, last year, as a result of us knowing that the foundational skills are essential in order for our students to receive the support they need, we also trained all of our TK teachers in letters training, which was for early education is not as intensive for the 2 years. And then the next step for this year is to train all of our preschool teachers. So that's the way we're approaching it. I hope that answers a little bit of the questions that you had about the foundational and what we're doing as a district.
It does. I mean, I would like to see how we can encourage other teachers to either opt into it or that we keep moving that cohort up. I mean, ideally, it would be great if all teachers from TK through 3 are willing to engage. And how can we facilitate that? We did have some comments about teacher feedback, and I feel that sometimes when something isn't happening, that we're missing a message there. And so I don't know if it's every Saturday, if that's the best way, because it's so intense, it has to be spread out over a year. So you can't do it the summer, like in August, spend your whole summer. It's learning that's too hard and too intense. But how can we facilitate that? How can we make that happen? Is it the weekends? Is it like the reimbursement? I don't know. I just think it's an investment in this district that we need to make it. And I just, as a board member, want to understand what the hiccups might be, what the costs might be, and maybe have a plan. And when we have these presentations, we say this many more teachers and we're getting there, and to just have that encouragement just to us, the community, that we are doing that foundational training. Thank you. I appreciate that
Absolutely.
update. Yeah.
And I did forget to mention is that the next step for that 40 cohort is that for those who pass with 80% or higher on their final test for all of their exams, they are eligible to be part of a cohort of the trainer of trainer models. So because of the circumstances we're in for our district that we can't mandate anyone to attend, we can offer the trainer of trainer models for those individuals who can then, we can provide our own training. So we don't have to rely on an organization to do it for us at their own pace. It would be more of our pace. So I will bring a plan for the board in the future with what we've done with each of the steps and what the next step will be.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And then if you have any insights or feedback as to why, if there are other adoption issues other than the intensity of the program, I'd be curious about that, just so we know what the reluctance might be. If there is reluctance, I don't know if that's the issue.
The time commitment. The time is what our teachers after school or Saturday and weekends, that is our biggest barrier. It's not that our teachers don't want to do this. It is the time and the intensity that it takes. So it's a lot to ask for teachers.
Mr. Manning.
It is a lot to ask, and teachers have a lot of reasons to prioritize lots of different things. I think that the greatest motivator of all is results, however. And when you start with a group that's dedicated, like your group of 40, and you're using proven curriculum and science that we know is going in the right direction, that eventually you can't deny the success, and that will bring people on board. It's not possible to just say all at once, here we go. But I really appreciate the way that we're approaching this from the perspective of the dedicated people that are giving that time and being paid for it to do the right thing. And when we see results, it will be easier to recruit the next group and the next group, and so forth. So I really do appreciate this, and I would echo the comment of one of our public speakers. $23,000 toward this is a drop in the bucket to do the quality of work that we're doing with this type of curriculum and training for teachers. And to any of the teachers that are in the room or listening, I really appreciate your engagement and involvement with watching this and making it work for us.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to add and take a step back with regards to how the community, because this is a heavy lift. And it can't be lifted by the district alone or by districts alone, just for some of the things that you just mentioned. And so First Five, literacy, at its foundation is our core of making sure that we're ready for kindergarten readiness. And what does that look like? So I would offer, as we're doing our new strategic plan, to have this in there. How do we include the early care community? To do that in our strategic plan, to work that so that it's coming from the early care, from preschool there, and also includes parents, right? How do we support this at home? They're ready for when they go into the systems, and how do they do that? Meeting them where they are, not judging that because you're not doing this, but what can we do with what you have in your, how can we support it? So making sure that we're asking what the need is, right? Because there are many needs that you have to make priority. And so I think I'd love to think about it later to make sure Reading Coalition, I'll make sure offline that we have a conversation with you with regards to First Five, because that's part of the foundational piece, right? And the earlier we get in there to start to look at that and offer it as an option, not mandated, this is the way it's due, you're going to fail if you don't do it this way. But how do we partner with this and help the districts? Because this is a heavy lift. So it just says it's about the community. So as a community, if language and literacy is a priority, then we're going to work together to figure out how we're going to do that. So we're not one person or one district lifting this heavy lift. And I also want to echo, thank you for the teachers. We understand you got a lot of full plates and then to add, a little dessert tray to the side. But it is worth that. We know that if we get there early, we see the results of the later success and when they get there. So I want to add that. And again, I'll meet offline with others, and we want to make sure that as we convene, first five, we convene around our strategic plan, which our goal is it's 70%. But if all of us come together, we may get the 90 to the 100, but it's going to take all of us to get there. So thank you for your presentation tonight, and looking forward for the update as well. So with that, board members, may I have a motion for approval?
I move to approve the purchase of Lexia's Language Essentials for teachers of reading and spelling, letters for early childhood materials, and related professional development.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Been motion and second. All in favor, please raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Alvarado.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move to G5, approval of 2023-24 Arts and Music Schools Annual Report.
No comments?
Okay. Yep. Good evening.
Okay, good evening, Board President Sims Moten, Board, and Dr. Maldonado. In the absence of Mr. Venz, I'm presenting the 23-24 Proposition 28 Arts and Music in Schools Annual Report for your approval. This report is one of 4 compliance requirements mandated by the state of California in our use of State Proposition 28 funds. To start, I just want to celebrate the board, not only for your collective support for the arts, but also the approval of the Arts Strategic Plan. That is one document that is really guiding our work moving forward. And as you know or may recall, there are 2 new and distinct funding sources in support of the arts in our school as a result of your support. One source is the Arts and Music Discretionary Block Grant in the amount of $7 million. These are one-time funds that are used to support arts materials and supplies for our educators. Know that these funds have been allocated to our schools using an equity lens and based on each school site spending plan. Additionally, each school has been allocated a budget, and just to be clear, this was just done this fall, and it's to be expended over the course of 2 school years, keeping in mind that these funds have an expiration date of June 2026. The second new source of spending is Proposition 28. It's our arts and music funding in the amount of $2 million that is an annual and ongoing resource for our schools. We do have requirements with this funding in that we supplement and not supplant funding for existing arts education programs. This means that our new funds are designed to increase and expand arts education spending, not to replace existing or past expenditures for this purpose. For the purpose of this action item, we're bringing forward to the board our annual fiscal report, demonstrating that we have utilized $0 as of the 23-24 school year. And as a consequence, our district applied for a waiver from the state to allow for more time for our arts committee to convene and work alongside our schools to develop a comprehensive spending plan. This is all in alignment with our adopted strategic plan. And with that, I'm here with my colleague, Denise Alvarado, close by, who has done an outstanding job leading the arts, especially for the report that this applies. So we are here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for your presentation. Hearing no request to speak, board members, comments or questions on this item? Ms. Beal?
I just wanted to actually provide because this is a question I had. And I know that there's a waiver here. And whenever we hear the word waiver, we're just like, okay, what did we not do that we have to ask for a waiver? And so I understood from my questions that we received these funds, but we had not completed our planning. So we were not able to do this is for the Prop 28, the 1.98 million. We were not able to distribute those funds in the 80% staffing, 20% materials that we would have done 23-24, except we started our planning after the start of the year. So I just want everybody to be clear. Oh,
Here on Zoom.
gosh. So I'll
We
let
can
you
see
do
you
it.
shaking
So-
your head,
okay.
so. I'm gonna have
You speak.
We
and
can
then
all
maybe
see
I-
you shaking your
yeah.
head, Steve.
Oh, gosh.
Can explain the order of how things took place. That would be really helpful. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you, Trustee. Beal.
Yeah. Good evening, Board Member Beal and board members and Superintendent Maldonado. Just to bring some clarity to this, it's not that we didn't start the planning in time. The rollout of the funding came late. It actually came during the spring of this 2024 year. 80% of the funding is required for staffing. And that's one of those things that's important to remember because it's an ongoing fund, so it does support staffing. And then 20% is used for additional resources. But as the funding came down so late to not just our school district, but other school districts, the state realized that they needed to do a waiver and to allow for many districts to submit a waiver to allow us to use that funding source this year for something else other than staffing. At the same time, we received $2 million again this year, and then we'll receive it the following year and so on. And we'll be able to put that funding towards the 80% staffing.
Thank you. Well said. Better than I said.
Just to clear, these are all compliance things that state and local school districts deal with. So thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any additional questions or comments? I just want to comment, but thank you, Steve, for clarification, and thank you, Ms. Pilhopper, for standing in. I just want to make sure that we're not, although it was the state's responsibility to get that, we're not going to be losing any time on the money. We're not going to lose it. It's not going to be shortened by any means, just because. And does the waiver cover that or allow us to spend it?
It does.
Okay.
So, and I think Steve may have illustrated that is that it rolls over for 3 years. So we'll receive an annual allocation, and that will roll over whatever unspent money is not expended within the year.
Oh, so we'll be able to keep it, because oftentimes if you spend it or lose it, right? So that's not the case here.
That's not the case. It will roll over.
Okay. And so does that then the rollover? Okay, now I know we were able to spend it on something else because of the timing. So when we get right with the timing, and we may have some rollover, going into this second year, is the 80% then going to be spent on staffing? And what you mean, new teachers? What does that 80% do?
So, go ahead. Did you want
Yes.
That's the next step for the committee and the
is.
staff to do,
Okay.
to figure out.
Okay.
Because again, if they become staff members funded by these grants, as you know, we get these grants, but they could run out. And so this will be folded into the reports we're doing with the board around budget sustainability. And we will make decisions, but we also have a committee that's making decisions to represent every schools with the staff in place here.
Thank you. Any additional questions or clarification? Ms. Munoz?
Just a comment that it's a pleasure to be on a board and to be active in the state when this kind of money is being put into the arts. I really appreciate it, and thank you for your oversight of it and the good decision making that's going on with the committees.
Ms. Munoz?
Yeah, certainly. I also wanted to express my appreciation to have this money, applied for, and so that our students will benefit from it and continue with their arts and music education. So thank you to all involved.
Okay. With that, may I have a motion for approval?
I move to approve the 23-24 Arts and Music in Schools Annual Report.
I second.
Been motion and second. All in favor, please raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Motion
board.
passes.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we'll move to G6, approval of resolution number 2024-25-10, recognizing September 15th through October 15th, Latinx Heritage Month. Superintendent.
Yes, so board members, I bring this to you. It's my 5th year bringing this resolution. As you know, the National Observation of Hispanic Heritage Month began in 1968 as Hispanic Heritage Week under President Lyndon Johnson, and was expanded by President Ronald Reagan in 1988 to cover a 30-day period starting September 15th and ending October 15th of each year. And it was enacted into law on August 17th, 1988 on the approval of Public Law 100-402. I do want to recognize that, you know, throughout history and into current day, Latinx people have made significant contributions in the fields of education, government, science, law, medicine, entertainment, literature, sports, military, and thereby enhancing and shaping the vibrancy of the United States with centuries-old traditions that reflect the multi-ethnic and multicultural customs of their communities. I'm just going to read that. I'm not going to read the whole resolution, but I am asking for the board's approval. And if you approve it, I have one more thing to share right after that.
Any requests to speak on this item, Mr. Banning? No request to speak. Board members, any comments or questions? Ms. Munoz?
I'd like to make a comment about one of our local notables, Jesse Orozco, who attended Santa Barbara High School and was a Don, and also Santa Barbara City College. He was in the World Series and coached by Santa Barbara High School Fred Warricker and Santa Barbara City College Rusty Fairley. 21 years, 2 World Series rings, played for the Dodgers in '88, 4 decades, and 2 All-Star appearances, with a baseball career just as a local hero. And I'd like to highlight him. My husband did attend Santa Barbara High School in the years when Jesse was there and such, and just very proud of him as one of our local alumni.
Thank you, Ms. Munoz, for that update. Hearing no additional comments and our questions, we need the action before you want to do what you need to. Okay, so with that, may I have a motion for approval of the resolution?
I so move for the approval of resolution number 2024-25-10.
I second the motion.
In motion second, all in favor, please raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Dr. Maldonado.
With that, I'm going to ask Sandra to bring up our last slide for the presentation on this one. One of the things we like to do when we have our leadership team meetings is to challenge people to share a little bit about, you know, quizzes. And one of the quizzes we asked of our all leadership meeting was to, without using AI or Google, can you name notable Hispanics or Latinos in our community? And I want to proudly state that Carol Narvaez, our assistant principal at La Colina, sent me this list. Oh, with some dancing music too. And you'll notice our board trustee, Rose Munoz, on this list as well. You'll notice names of board members, assistant principals, yours truly, our SBTA president, some folks from fiscal services, and many more who work for Santa Barbara Unified. And today we want to recognize them as part of this Hispanic Heritage Month resolution. I think Julio's seen his name there, Sandra Trujillo, and many others. And we think it's important that we highlight this because, again, our students really need to know how many of us are here to represent them. Thank you, Sandra. And I encourage everyone to let us know other Latino, Hispanic leaders in our community that you would like us to highlight. We're trying to do 1 social media post a day. So if you send me the name and in picture, we could highlight them in our social media as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. Next, we'll move to G7, approval of a resolution 2425-11, recognizing October as National Dyslexia Awareness Month. There she is, Ms.
I
Madison.
said I was doing this one. Welcome. No, you do it.
Madam Superintendent, I don't fight for work, so if you would like to, I could take my seat. Thank you. All right, I stand asking the board for approval for a resolution for recognizing October as National Dyslexia Awareness Month. I do note that it is on the agenda for special education, but dyslexia is a whole system awareness. It is not just special education, so I just want to highlight that. And this resolution recognizes October as National Dyslexia Month. Approximately 15 to 20% of the population is estimated to have had to have dyslexia, meaning around 1 in 5 people may experience some of the learning disability. Dyslexia is primarily characterized by difficulties with reading fluency and comprehension, often leading to challenges in spelling and writing as well. People with dyslexia can have an average or above average intelligence and may excel in other areas like visual, spatial skills, and creative thinking. So I will present this to you, board, for approval for this resolution.
Any requests to speak on this item? Board members, any comments or questions? Hearing none, thank you, Ms. Edison. May I have a motion for approval?
I move to approve resolution 2024-2025-11, recognizing October as National Dyslexia Awareness Month.
I second the motion.
Been motion and second. All in favor, please raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Now we'll move to item G8, review and adoption of the Santa Barbara Unified School District Board Governance Handbook. Are there any requests to speak before we just speak of it? Okay, so board, we can discuss this. We know we had our special meeting. So board members, any comments regarding this item? Mr. Banning.
In January of 2023, when I was being interviewed for the board appointment, one of the things I said was that the district had already done good work around governance by having a board handbook that is online and available. On Saturday of last week, the board met to review all of the protocols and principles for governance operations and to discuss whether they're still meeting, whether that handbook still meets our needs and how we're doing on various areas of it. Was a really an interesting and productive day for us to talk about that. And I think what it yielded more than anything else is the acknowledgement that this handbook, the work of a board, I guess in 2021, was done well and something that will help us as a governance team to continue to meet those requirements. And I'm happy to consider a readoption or recertification with the current board members' names on it so that it remains relevant and current. And I just wanted to say how much I appreciated being in the process of seeing that.
Any additional comments, board members? Mr. Enos? Thanks. I would just only add to that. Thank you. I would just add to that in 2021, as we're coming forward, we were creating a system of, again, past boards change. There's some foundational, and hearing these words are so critical to what we do and how we're actually seeing that as a part of our processes. So that it has developed and evolved over time to where it's really a foundational support for board members coming in. It's also used for board members in a new orientation. How do we start to look at that and how we are governing? And it's so important because sometimes there's confusion in terms of what's our role as a governing body. So we've really worked really hard to do that, continue to do that. And so in January, when this board gets reseated, December, so there will be a starting point for the next board to really look at that, what has been done, and then based on whatever's happening in the community regulations with regards to boards, they'll have a starting place for that. So, and it also provides consistency. So hearing no request to speak and additional comments from the board, may I have a motion for approval?
I move to approve the the district board governance handbook.
I second.
Been motion and second. All in favor, please raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, board members, we are now at the report and discussion part of the agenda. Do you want to take a break? Hold on one second, or you just self-care and go in and out. If you want to keep going, whichever your pleasure. You need a break. Okay, we'll have a small break, 10 minutes, back. Okay, we are now moving to, okay, so I'm going to call us back to order. Dr. Maldonado, you are wanted at the front of the room, please. I'm going to call us back to order. See, we can get out of here a little earlier and y'all can continue conversation after that. So, okay. Okay. That's on K1.
Eric.
On K1.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so now I'm going to move us to, thank you. I'm going to move us to report and discussion. H1, Systems of Continuous Improvement for Student Outcomes and Report. All right. Oh.
All right. Can you hear me? There we go. So good evening, Board President Sims Moten, board members, Dr. Maldonado, and our audience here. I'm Dr. Lynn Sheffield, Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, here to talk about our systems of continuous improvement. As we begin this presentation, just want to bring your attention to that this is one of 3 presentations that we will bring to you. So we will give you an overview of what is happening, and as you've seen in the detailed board report, and tonight we will just cover a few of those items and then revisit again throughout this school year. And so as we take a look, I wanted to make sure I emphasize our results statement. And as a district, we're committed to increasing student achievement, closing the achievement gap for all students, TK through 12, through a comprehensive system of continuous improvement. As you'll look through our presentation tonight, we'll take a system-wide approach, connecting our LCAP goal number 1, which is on academics. And then we will be sharing key initiatives, some that you have seen, and we'll be connecting and aligning them as we move forward for this system-wide approach to achievement. On this next slide, I want to bring your attention to some of the ways that people have thought about education. Inequality and equality are things that we definitely don't want. We want to eliminate these inequalities. We want to eliminate our inequities and eliminate the injustices. And we want to move towards a just system, really moving for that joyful learning experience for all of our students and for all of our educators and all stakeholders. And so taking a look, really paying attention to that justice, how we're making sure we're reaching all students at all levels with a variety of tools to make sure that they are successful. I want to connect that as we are providing all these opportunities and tools for our students. We are moving forward to this ultimate goal of getting our students to be college and career prepared. So we need to get them to the end of where we have them, which is graduation. And so, and achieving graduation with the highest success. This picture here depicts our overarching ideas as we move forward as a district. You have seen and heard from us on the multi-tiered systems of support, and this captures our work that you've been hearing about and really connects how we are taking this work throughout our system. We are taking a look at tonight a few of these items. I want you to focus in on our, of course, our overarching umbrella, multi-tiered systems of support. We will also concentrate on our data and assessment and professional learning communities, PLCs. I would like for everyone to really get a picture of our district demographics, and there are specific groups in which we focus on to close our achievement gap, and we want to speed up the process for progress. And so take them in the different demographics, and then we will approach them as we go throughout this presentation. Here, we take a look at our student groups. This is our student enrollment based on socially economically disadvantaged, students with disabilities, emerging multilingual learners, and our homeless foster youth. And we'll take you through all of these groups and how we want to make sure we address our systems of continuous improvement. Highlighting here our EVER EMLs. Within our EVER EMLs, you have our students that are identified as emerging multilingual learners, our RFEP students, those are students that have been reclassified, but we still have to monitor them. Then our students that are fully exited, and then our English only. And so if you notice, that takes 43%. So we still need to be providing services for our emerging multilingual learner students because they are 43% of our student population. So as we look at our CAS scores, I want you to take a look at 3 pivotal areas. We will look at our 3rd grade, we will look at our 8th grade and 11th grade. And so if you take a look at our 3rd grade, we show that there has been ongoing and continuous improvement. And you see here within just the last year from 23 to 24, we've shown a 5% growth. And then you see a significant growth for our 3rd grade from 2023 to 24 with 9% growth. For our 8th grade students, again, there is progress that we are showing. Again, looking at 22 to 23, you will see a 3% growth. And for math, you will see a 5% growth. And moving on to our high school students, right now there's been some inconsistencies. So it's been varied and stagnant. So within our English language arts, we have gone from 51 back to up in growth, 55 and back to 51. And then it's been really stagnant in our 11th grade. And so we want to take this data and really identify key areas in which we want to really push in our supports to support our students. As far as our high school students and our A to G completion over the past 3 years, the A to G completion rate has actually decreased. We did note that our class of 2024 was that class that entered 9th grade during 2019-2020 during that first year of COVID. And we look at that as a possible cause, but we still need to identify what is holding our students up and then address those needs of our students. Something that I wanted to also show the team, as I mentioned, we needed to recognize our student demographics. And so these are the demographics for our students that are currently enrolled in our dual enrollment. So as we have our classes on our campuses, as well as at Santa Barbara City College, right now, you notice that the numbers are disproportionate and overrepresentation in certain demographics over others. And so if you notice, our white population is only 30% of our demographics, yet they are 50% of the students enrolled in dual enrollment. Our Latino students, they are 60.8% of our demographics, but they are only 38.1% of our dual enrollment. We see there's disparities and disproportionate, and we need to make sure that we have key goals to address that issue. And so as we reviewed our data based on evaluation, looking at trends, we did identify goals, and we felt that it takes time to strengthen, and we identified 2 years as that time to really establish our systems in place and recognize progress that is occurring. So we identified English language arts, literacy, and math goals. So by June 2026, our 3rd graders will increase by 10% in English language arts for meeting and exceeding standards. 8th graders meeting and exceeding standards by 6%, and our 11th graders meeting and exceeding standards by 6% again. For literacy, that is a key focus. By June 2026, all students TK through 8 not meeting or nearly meeting standards will demonstrate growth in literacy by at least 2 years annually. So by 2026, we expect that 4-year growth. So speeding up that progress for our students. And for math, our 3rd graders meeting and exceeding standards will increase by 20%, as seen on the SBAC. 8% meeting or exceeding by 10%, and then 11th grade meeting and exceeding by 10. Other key areas that we definitely think is important to mention, as I showed you the data for our emerging multilingual learners, we definitely want to look at them and look at our reclassification rate, and we want to improve that by 7%. Looking at our emerging multilingual learner progress indicator, we want to look at, as was seen in previous presentations, look at the LP. And so we want our percentage of EMLs who maintain or increase the LP on the California dashboard will show a growth of 10%. Increasing our graduation rate by 3%. And by the way, our graduation rate is above the state as well as the county average, but we definitely still want to show growth in that area. And then graduates meeting the UC-CSU, that's our A to G rates, we will increase that by 10%. And so establishing those goals, we also identified the need for our identifying SMART goals for our staff. And that staff includes our teachers, our leaders, our principals within the district. And so these implementation goals, as seen in our report, are addressing our PLCs, our implementation of PLCs, as well as assessment, high quality tier 1 instruction, professional learning, and high quality curriculum. Our key is not only looking for success of our students, but looking for the success of our staff and making sure that they have the tools to put these systems in place and then having student achievement rise. So we go to our multi-tiered systems of support. And so I want to take you back to remind you what are our tiers. Our tier 1 at the bottom is for all students. Tier 2, some students. Tier 3 are for few. And then we take a look at how we're going to be addressing our students, in what way. Looking at teaming structures, PLCs, using the data within our PLCs to really have conversation for our students on how we're going to improve evidence-based curricular instructional practices, and then continuous improvement cycles. And so when we talk about the assessment continuum, we will take you through how we're using that data in cycles to address our student needs, going back and taking a look at what needs to improve, what we need to change, and what we need to keep the same. Within tier 1, I want to take you back to when we spoke about universal access. And within universal access, we've been progressing every year as far as the implementation of universal access. So for our grades 7 and 8, we now have universal access happening in all core classes at all junior high schools for English, math, social studies, and science. So it's happening at all schools in all of our core classes. So that is growth year after year. It initially started out with ELA, and then we progressed to the other core content. Within our high schools, we have our 9th and 10th grade ELA classes that are universal access. So making sure our student groups are heterogeneously mixed so that we have our students learn from each other, and we've seen success in that place. Also within this, I want to bring your attention to our EML data. And in order to support our emerging multilingual learners, we're planning as a system to engage our teachers in integrated ELD strategies, professional learning, so that we can implement that system-wide tier 1. Moving into our intervention, which is more of our tier 2 as well as tier 1. And so within our elementaries, we have brought to you programs such as Power Hour. So that is happening for ELA as well as math in Power Hour. Our elementary schools are really identifying small groups that are spread out throughout the school. Students are grouped by different levels and really focusing in on interventions for ELA as well as math. Within our secondary schools, we did pilot programs last year, and I'm happy to say that we are implementing interventions district-wide for our math. We have IXL for our math, and we're using Lexia for our ELA. So the benefits of our Power Hour, number one, again, looking at that data that's going to drive our decisions, getting our cycles, those cycles of improvement that we spoke about for PLCs. It's targeted, ensuring that we are doing our best for our most needy. It's collaborative, making sure all parties are involved, and inclusive. I mentioned some of our ELA interventions. So we do have our Lexia English language development. We are using that in our elementary classes, and for our EML students, we have Lexia Core 5 and Lexia Power Up is happening grades 6 through 12. As we move into thinking about our A to G, UC, CSU, and our dual enrollment, things that are happening district-wide, we have our peak tutoring centers at all junior high schools and high schools. We know that all students cannot go after school, but we do provide that opportunity for them to take advantage of the peak centers. And so it has grown within the past couple of years to ensure that all students have that access. Starting this year, we're really honing in on different PLC groups. So it's not just within the core content areas or within the teachers in their classrooms. We are ensuring that our counselors are going to be embracing data as we look at DF data, as we look at our students reaching UC, CSU approval and accomplishment, and then our dual enrollment. Something for our dual enrollment, I wanted to mention that we do have a grant that has been put underway called CCAP, and that is College and Career Access Pathways, and it has been put in place. It is partnered and aligned with California Ed Code to provide students with access to dual enrollment opportunities. So we have received this grant. Definitely want to make sure we include this opportunity for our Latino, Hispanic students, ensuring that they are getting signed up. And so all this data that we are looking at, definitely putting it in the hands of our counselors, putting it in the hands of our administrators so that we can make a difference as we program our students for class and then support them as they are in these difficult classes. And now moving on to our PLCs. So we put a statement here for what we believe in, the purpose of PLCs. It's the fundamental purpose is to ensure that all students are learning at high levels. And something to recognize, it says not most, not all regular education students, but we are saying all students. So it's very important, and we realize the importance of PLCs. And research shows that teachers working together and engaging in inquiry and student learning is one of the best ways to increase our student improvement. Now, as you see, this is something we have embraced, and we are really embarking on this. It was mentioned today that we had our all-day PLC training for our elementary schools. Tomorrow, we embark in all-day training for our secondary schools. So really embracing this PLC and aligning our efforts in the way that we speak, the way that we look at the data, and the way that we approach our students to increase student learning. 4 key questions that we are asking our PLCs to look at. Number 1, what should students know and be able to do? So looking not only at our content standards that the state of California, our teachers need to identify their essential standards and know what they want our students to know and be able to do. Identify how they will assess progress and mastery. Looking at data, how will we respond when students struggle? So once they have identified the program, looked at how we're going to assess it. We put it in place. We look at the data and then we say, how do we do if they struggled at this? So those are the conversations. And then what do we do if they're excelling? So looking at both groups to ensure that we're covering all bases. This is some of our POC at work. Here you'll notice we had our junior high schools that had a minimum day. And so we had district-wide PLCs, and I had the pleasure of going into a math PLC as well as our visual and performing arts PLC. And next I want to move into our assessment continuum. And so as we look at this, this is the work of our PLCs, really identifying what our students need to know and what are they going to do. So this information right here, this is on our district website also. It takes into account what our students should know by the end of this course. And then we need to identify how we're going to assess as well as when our students will be assessed. So looking at formative, interim, and summative assessments to monitor our students' learning on an ongoing basis and providing that throughout the school year. That is data that's provided by teachers and their own assessments, school site assessments, district assessments, a variety. So looking at our SPEC, looking at our STAR, the assessments that are coming through from our IXL and Lexia, using all that to inform the way that we work and how we're interacting with our students. So within our assessment continuum, it is a guide that, number one, identifies when we're going to be assessing and how we will be assessing. So our elementary is very detailed. It identifies when we're implementing the assessments. It also has included within that the content in which they're doing it and the pacing in which they will be providing that work. Within our secondary, we're also moving in that space. They're doing a lot of work really identifying how they're going to be putting that core content together and those cycles in which they're going to be assessing our students and using those formative and summative assessments within the classroom. Our secondaries are putting in that work. So we have the what. It guides our educators to ensure all students have the same access to grade level standards. And that's what we call a guaranteed viable curriculum. The why, to ensure an equitable system for all students. Who? All educators. I'm accountable for that review of data. We all are accountable for that review of data. And then when? To be used year round by all educators to support pacing as well as planning. Know when to go forward, move fast, or when we should slow down. And so that is the beginning of what we're doing to ensure that we have ongoing system of continuous achievement. And I will be bringing back more information in a couple of months. Any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Sheffield. Believe we have a request to speak on this item.
We do. Jim Armstrong.
Yeah, members of the board. My name is Jim Armstrong. I'm also part of the Reading Coalition, and I spent about an hour and a half today going through the Education Service Department's program describing their continuous improvement. And I'll continue to watch with interest over the next few months as they come back with updates. And first, I want to congratulate your staff on putting together such a comprehensive program. On paper, it reads well. However, with my own experience in over 35 years of implementing complicated continuous improvement, I just want to give you a few suggestions and comments. First, keep it simple. When I read the details of the program, at least as a layperson, it contains a multitude of acronyms, platitudes, and a lot of happy talk. And with very little detail about how things are actually going to be implemented. And what's especially lacking to me is the accountability. Who's accountable for the results? In fact, I heard a comment made, everybody's going to be held accountable. And my experience is you can't just have everybody accountable because then nobody is accountable. And I think you need to come up with a system on who's going to be held accountable for not only implementation, but especially results. Second, top-down approaches rarely work. And I want to say, while I was really pleased to see some specific goals and objectives for both math and English learning progress, I think it's important that there was no discussion about who came up with these goals. Was this 3 or 4 people sitting in an office saying, what do you think we can do? Or was there discussion with the implementers about what's possible and what can they do? I think you definitely want leadership from the top, but in my mind, leadership from the top is not top-down goals and objectives, but instead it's administrators and the board providing the resources, both in time and talent and attention, so that then the implementers can get the job done. And but I'm worried that we've got folks just setting goals without a lot of discussion about, okay, are these realistic goals? And third, model your program on other programs that have been successful. Years ago, I heard a saying about, if you want to be a millionaire, take a millionaire to lunch. And in my mind, if you want to be successful in implementing these programs, find the best programs in the state, in the nation, down the road at Peabody, and go send your people there and say, how did you do it? And figure out, find the people who have already been through some of this, send your PLCs there. Let's spend a couple days with a successful program, whether it's in Palo Alto or it's in Savannah, Georgia, but find the folks that have been successful with similar demographics to yours and say, okay, how did you do it? Can we copy it? Because one of the things I found in public agencies is they love to share success. I think we can get too dependent sometimes on vendors, on schools of education, on a lot of pundits that have great ideas. And to me, the area where you're going to find the most success is talk to the people who have already done it. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. No other comments?
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Sheffield. And thank you for those public comments. So board members, comments, questions? Okay, Mr. Banning.
Thank you for your presentation, Dr. Sheffield. I have a question and a comment or two. The question comes back just to clarity of terminology when we talk in our goals about increases, 10% increase. I want to make sure that we're clear that are we talking about a 10% increase from where we are, or 10 percentile point growth? It's two different things, and I'm presuming it's the latter. But I just want to make sure that our language is clear when we're talking about goals, and whether if we're at 50, 10% puts us as 55, 10 percentile points puts us as 60. So I would ask for clarity around that information. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and this is just an observation, when we looked at the growth scores from 22 and 23 and 24, and we saw that growth, I think it's important to remind people that those are not cohort growth scores. In other words, that's not a grade level that's getting better every time it goes by. That is a grade level with a group of students passing through.
Yes.
The test, the SBAC testing itself was never designed to be what's called vertically scalable. It wasn't aligned to be able to say, get 100 here, get 110 here, get 100. People will still look at it that way, but the data that you were showing was not that. It was a group passing through. So when we see that anomaly, like 51, 55, 51, that's 3 completely different groups of students, and 3 different groups of students who had different experiences at different times in their careers, much like we were talking about what happened to the A to G requirements when that was the class that was in COVID. When you look at, and I think if my calendaring is right, I think if you look at that 51, 55, 51, that those are kids that were probably the 51 that came through were probably kids that were in junior high school, 6th, 7th grade during COVID. What probably the age level that was most seriously impacted by going to 100% virtual instruction. So I would say that those 3 graphs that we saw were really good, but it's important to see them in a much bigger scale of what happens as people move through. The whole idea here is that a system that's growing, that's using effective continuous growth, will see that kind of growth because as kids are getting better foundational skills, going back to that, they're better prepared all along, and it will look like this. But it's not the same as a group of kids that grow as they're moving. We don't have good data to show that. What we do have is to show whether the system itself is strengthening. And I think much of what you presented tonight is very much related to strengthening the system. And we've talked about it from the foundational levels on up. If we do things right, if we're listening to the experts, if we're looking at the right programs, if we're doing all those things, that's what we will see as the system grows and becomes stronger. You will see not cohort growth, but grade level growth as the different groups go through. And so you provided us with some really good data on that. I'm anxious, I'm pleased to see it starting and to see the discussion going on. I saw some names that are highly respected, even the quote from what we're defining as PLCs from the work of the DeFores and others. These are incredibly valuable and reliable methods. And when you add that together with dedicated staff and people that are looking for the best examples, I think there's reason to be hopeful and pleased with the direction we're moving. Thank you.
Thank you. And I wanted to address your question. So yes, we're looking at the percentile growth.
Okay.
Absolutely. And then, yes, we are looking at that system-wide foundational growth. We are going to be presenting a more in-depth student outcomes report in October so that you will have that opportunity to see the grade level as well as the cohort.
Perfect.
But I wanted to keep it foundational so that we could see that growth system-wide and see if we're making that difference.
Very good. I appreciate it. And just a final comment that this kind of growth is going to, just like anything else, you watch any kind of curve, it's up and down and up and down and up and down, but you can see the growth over time. And that's what we need to be seeing and not panicking over an anomaly here and there.
Ms. Beal?
Thank you again, Dr. Sheffield. As you mentioned, this is the system. We've asked for a system so that we can have consistency. And then in October, you're going to actually present data. And I agree with Board Member Banning that we are going to see probably maybe some changes that are positive or negative, but we would want to have the data on as a cohort moves through.
Yes.
I have a few questions just kind of on the system. They're pretty small questions, but of course, you talked about dual enrollment, and I think it's really clarification that for people listening to the presentation, these are high school students who are taking college level courses, can also be at the high schools, can be at City College.
Yes.
Now, are we using that as a marker for how advanced a student is or how ready they are for college? Like, what are we tracking when we look at dual enrollment, whether it's by ethnic group or a number of students?
So a couple of things we're looking at. So we offer our dual enrollment courses as an opportunity for our students to get college credit as well as high school credit. So that is a marker of them being college and career ready. As we look at our dashboard, something that is looked at is our students that take the advanced level classes, as well as our students that are completers for our CTE pathways. And so there are a variety of programs that offer opportunities for our students to be what we call completers. So for example, our MAD Academy, they're doing an amazing job by even changing their application for applying to the MAD Academy to ensure that they are addressing a larger number of our demographics that you do not see recognized in our dual enrollment classes, as well as they want to have that in the MAD Academy. So they have identified a way to do that by changing that application, ensuring they're getting the right students within their program, and then providing supports for them to be successful in that program. And then the dashboard will show that.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that it also includes looking at our academies because of the dual enrollment opportunities that are there. in our multi-tiered system of support, we always have at the center the student and the teacher. And so when we look at data, like we are going to in October, we are going to be looking at students and how they are performing. I am curious about the teacher side of it because we talk about PLCs, we talk about MTSS, and I'm curious on how are we assessing that the teachers are benefiting from the system that we are talking about right now. So where are we going to get that feedback? I know that PLCs, you could hear about it, but I feel like there needs to be a more robust system. Is it beneficial? Is it working? Is it giving those opportunities to teachers? How are we going to hear about that?
So we have done a couple of things. Number one, we have done a pre-assessment for our school sites. Our principals should be using that with their site leadership team to really assess where they are. And then we'll take a look at that at the end of the year, and we'll be looking for growth. Another place we'll be looking for data in regards to PLCs and really our staff and how they feel about what is happening is we're going to depend on our panorama survey and look at how they're feeling in regards to professional learning and how things are happening there. Does that answer your question?
It does. So is a panorama survey something that district leadership looks at? And I'm just curious.
Absolutely. We are using that in a variety of ways. So we started off this school year looking at the panorama data, both for our teachers and classified staff, and really looking at how we're going to address and work with everyone. So it's used regularly.
So is this something that's going to be included in these 3 reports you talk about during the year, that we get some feedback as to how the whole system is actually working, not just that the system is there, but that is effective, whatever
Yes.
issues. I don't want to say
Yes.
ineffective, but if there are any issues.
And that'll be shared by my colleague. I think are you sharing any panorama survey this evening? She'll be sharing a little bit of panorama data tonight, but yes, we will make sure we share other information that you may want to see.
Yeah. Okay. And I was excited to hear about the grant. I hope I hear more about it, the one that gives more access to dual enrollment, how that is used. So that sounds really, really interesting to me. I think those are my questions. I'm sure I'll have many more in October, but that at least starts me out with understanding the system you've set up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Munoz?
Yes, just want to, sorry about that. Express my appreciation for the presentation and the time put into this in terms of providing the information to us, and then where we're at and the goals and how, students are going to get there in terms of the teaching staff, and then also the support to the students, depending on where they're at, how much, the MTSS in terms of universal support, additional and intensified. And I look forward to the next report and getting more information. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just a couple, Ms. Bill.
I have one more question. I'm sorry. I noticed that in this report, you talked about the system. You're looking at 3rd, 8th, and 11th graders. And obviously in October, we're going to be looking at all students. So I do have a little bit of a question. Do we leave 6th grade out of this? I mean, in terms of seeing that there's some transition points, that 3rd grade is kind of what we that's early elementary. That's not,
Right.
That's a good time. And then we jump to 8th, and there's a big gap there. 6th to 8th is where students go from one school to another.
Right.
So are you giving these examples as inflection points that you're going to focus on, or just for the purpose of this presentation, you talked about 3rd, 8th, and 11th? I'm just curious.
We chose a data point for elementary, junior high, and high school. High school is only one, but we did choose those data points as we move through, knowing that we will be doing outcomes reports also with the board. We chose these as areas that we will progress, as places that we think are important to look at our student data as they're beginning that elementary grade, that 8th grade, and then at 11th. We didn't want to do too much to overpower the outcomes report. So there is a lot more data to come, but we will be using these points as we continue to monitor.
Okay, I understand that. I do wonder though, if we really need to be looking at this transition from elementary to secondary.
Okay.
So I just want to jump in. I know that the board has asked us to do different kinds of reporting throughout, and we've sort of been refining that. For the illustration of what Dr. Sheffield is bringing today, these are inflection points. These are just to illustrate. We could have just done a systems report without why. And so we chose third grade because we've been hearing, right? Students must read by third grade. So the purpose of those outcomes here today are to sort of guide the whole plan. There's still other pieces she didn't report on today that she's going to bring back according to our governance calendar that we decided earlier as a governance team that we would break up this information for the board and for others who are here to join us. We will be here hours if we go into all of it. So I just want to be mindful that it was to illustrate that point. You will have an outcomes report where we'll look at all those pieces. And these are just, by the way, one dipstick kind of assessment. There is formative assessments, there is teacher assessments. We could go on and on, but the purpose here is just to give you an idea of all these disparate things you think we may be bringing, how we're putting it all together, how we've been working on this for the last 4 years. So that's kind of what we're going based on the board's feedback to us earlier about not overwhelming you, but also trying to bring some a container to hold the space for the work that we're trying to do. That's the common language from our study session. I hope that makes sense. And we do understand the 3rd and the 6th and the 8th will come later.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so thanks. So just any more questions from the board before? Okay, just a couple questions. Well, thank you for this report, and I can appreciate because we have asked, and there's been different iteration as to what we want. So I'm trying. So I appreciate the efforts to try to get us to that point. And if we need to, just in terms of agenda management, if we need more time on this item, and not so at the end of the evening when we're trying to gather it around, and we want to respect the time that it takes to get this report here. So thank you for that. I do have a question with regards to how our feeder districts, how are we working with them with regards to students coming into this district? Do we have an articulation? Are they part of that just to see their readiness? Because their readiness obviously impacts what we have to do going forward, right?
Right.
So
That is still a work in progress. I will do a little bit more, get a little bit more detail. Our feeder districts more so are feeding into our junior high space when we talk about more so our Goleta schools, Goleta Valley, as well as La Colina. They get different feeders and then some into our high schools.
So I would add to that.
Yes.
To take a step back to early care and education, that preparation.
Yes.
So when they feed into the school, how are we going taking a step back to their early care program? So what are they doing? Just as a conversation, again, this is a community thing, and how are we going to be able to lift this community in various areas, and how do we bring folks in and at what time? And so again, First Five wants to be a partner with that, because the earlier we start in building that foundation, the better they go when they're entering in those feeder district, whether it's Santa Barbara Unified or others. It's really about all of our students being ready to read. So just thank you for. You have a comment.
Yeah, I was going to say that I had opportunities to meet monthly with the local superintendents from the county. I know, for example, Goleta has made changes to their reading program, but we don't use the same reading programs in all the different elementary school districts that are feeding up to our junior highs. And that's just, I mean, they have different boards, they have different superintendents, and that is a truth. And that's just not something we are talking about really, because they have different approaches that they're all doing. We have had conversations about it in the car as we go to different meetings, but it's not something that we have coordinated efforts to align on. We do, sorry, just one more point. We do have the data that gets transferred over from Goleta Union into our ARIES system for our 7th graders. But it doesn't, those are areas that we're still working through. And I know that the two principals at Goleta Valley Junior High and at La Colina do meet with some of the folks over in Goleta Union as they have different students coming through. There is some collaboration. I'll look at Mr. Shetler here for special education students, where we do have meetings when we have transfer of students. So there is some alignment, but there's not complete alignment, and it would be a stretch for us to commit to trying to get that going at this point, just to be realistic in terms of us trying to run our system and figuring out what they're doing in there. So we could try to have maybe like a 1 or 2 year, once or twice a year convening to talk about that and bring that back to the board, but it's not in place at this point.
Yeah, and it's more like a comment, and again, as a partner. So we have governors brunches every year. So I'm saying that could be a convening, again, not putting on that burden on Santa Barbara Unified Organization. So I understand, but readiness, what does that look like across districts? What does readiness look like? So that would be something as a partner, I would say, let's convene around this readiness. What does that look like? So not necessarily thinking that we should align, but readiness is readiness. And so how do we make sure that we're aligning on the readiness? Again, not to burden anyone, not specifically, but again, thank you. And I like this piecemeal bringing it in and adjusting and adapting from the board's request. So I think you've done a really good job on that. And I just had on one of the slides, I noticed it was the student enrollment slides there. We don't have the African American, and I don't know if that's again on that slide on the student enrollment, we don't have that population there, but we do have them on the dual enrollment. Is it the same? We just mislabeled that? It's not labeled on the student enrollment. Here it is on the dual enrollment, yes. But the student enrollment.
Yes.
It's slide 9.
So I recognize that now.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, just want to
But
make sure.
it was not, yes, I'll make sure that that is changed.
And so that we can, yes, okay, that was the only just a
Okay.
technical piece. So are there any additional comments or questions, board members? Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Sheffield.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, we'll move to our next and final report on discussion on enrollment, attendance, and service suspensions. And Ms. Edison is on her way.
All right. All right. Mr. Shetler and our board are presenting to you tonight. You have a detailed annual report, so we're going to highlight some areas around attendance and suspension and expulsion that is not in the slide. Thank you so much for this time. As Student and Family Services, we have some focus areas. I won't go over all of those, but you can review that. Have some great and amazing work going on within our division, and I'm really excited about the outcomes we're working towards. We've already saw this slide, so I won't repeat that. I just want to highlight our elementary, junior high, and high schools. We support students and families and staff at each of those school sites. Really want to focus you in on, we talk about data, but here's how we're using data to inform our decisions and which data points. You'll hear me talk about our implementation data as we talk about attendance, as well as our student and staff outcome data and how we triangulate all of these things to ensure that we're developing a system that outlives all of us, and that our community still has access to those supports and services. Chronic absenteeism. It is an issue. Just as a reminder for the board, chronic absenteeism are students missing 10% or more of the school year, and that is for the dates that they are enrolled in school. We'll use a student enrolled all year as of 180 days. If they miss 18 or more days, we report them to the state as a chronic absentee. Do want to highlight that we have had growth in this area. We are really focusing on making sure that students feel value supported, seen, and included at school, and that we have all the supports for the whole child in place. Last year, our chronic absentee rate decreased by 2.4%. In the preliminary data that isn't public on CalPAS yet, but based on the data that we reported to them, we dropped another 2.9% with a 19.6 rate of chronic absentees. Again, work to be done, but that is it. Most of our work is proactive work. So how do we promote school attendance? Attendance matters on time, all day and every day. That's what we tell families. You do not need to memorize the board policy. You just need to know that attendance matters on time, all day and every day. That's how your student should be there. For high school, we also need to add in class because our high schoolers go to school and may not go to class. So we do need to differentiate that. This is where we could use your help in also promoting this. This is our preemptive and proactive work. Families get a number of communications from us around attendance, as you know, because you've also received communication from families about the tone of the letters or what's included in the letters. Our truancy letters are dictated by law. It's exactly from the law. It tells us what needs to be in there. Our chronic absentee letters, we get to tweak, but it's all about promoting on time, all day, and everyday school attendance. One of the things that we've put in place to address attendance is our SARB. We own our SARB internally because we want to make sure that we've exhausted all of our supports for families before we refer them out of the district. So our chronic absentee numbers are moving in the right direction, and we still have work to do. One of the things we do, so this is outcome data from families, is at every SARB, we give an opportunity for families to take an anonymous survey and for them to report to us what they believe the problem is with their students and attending school. As you can see, our number one is motivation. The parents are reporting their kids are not motivated to go to school. One of the things as far as our implementation data and our capacity as a system is we want to make sure that all the families before they get to us have been supported by the school site. So on the bottom left, you can see that. Did the school discuss resources with you? 91.3% of the families reported, yes, they did. And that's what we want to see. For our SARB meeting, we want to make sure that we're giving families more information on top of this stuff at the school site. And 91% of the families reported that they got new resources at SARB. So it really is important for us to exhaust support before we tap into accountability. I talked to you about triangulating data. So this is what families are saying, and this is how attentive are students in class. As you can see, for our 3rd through 6th graders, 56% of our students reported positively that they are attentive and invested in class. So that means that we have 34% of our students 44% of our students that we need to work on that with. Those are the students who are being referred to SARB. For our 7th through 12th grade, you can see that number is even lower. This is what students are reporting for themselves. How excited are you about going to class? 60% of our 3rd through 6th graders reported positively that they were excited, and 21% of our 7th through 12th graders. You heard Dr. Sheffield talk about the Panorama survey. We have many questions that we ask. So what was relevant to her presentation was the questions around how relevant is the professional learning for you? How do you feel prepared to serve all learners in your classroom? And things that are really pertinent to instruction. I'm only highlighting attendance data in mine. So triangulating even more, our teacher survey. On most days, how enthusiastic are your students about being at school? Of the responses, 45% of the teachers responded positively, that kids are excited to be in school. They're quite enthusiastic, extremely enthusiastic about being there. And then we have our area that we can focus, which is sometimes called bubble students. So 43% of teachers said, somewhat. That kind of correlates to what the parents reported, that their students are not motivated to go to school, what students themselves reported, and then what teachers are reporting. So a lot of the efforts that are happening in ed services around UDL and how do we ensure that we engage all learners in multiple modalities of access to the instruction, as well as demonstrating their knowledge and what they know, will also benefit this engagement and belonging piece in class. And so these all link together. And I'll pass it to Mr. Sheffield.
Thank you, Ms. Edison. So we were trying to think about how we tie these topics together of attendance and then kind of pivoting to suspension and expulsion. And one of the tie-ins is that, we really want to get kids there, but it's what happens when they're there that matters a lot. Kids show up as kids, and just like their occasionally more mature counterparts, adults, they make mistakes, right? And they do things to test limits that are developmentally appropriate and still hard on us. So it's that balance of how do we maintain those safe environments and also recognize that we got to teach and reteach sometimes what those expectations are. You'll notice in the top right box, we have those social emotional competencies. Those are specific skills that need to sometimes be taught and retaught. We have programs for that, and we'll talk a little bit more about how that may be used as a response to student behavior in lieu of a suspension. When we talk about our suspension rates, we're going to look at 2022-23 data and then some preliminary data from last year. In 2023, our overall rate for the district was 2.7% of our students were suspended at least one day. The statewide rate for that same year was 3.5%, so we were doing well. When we looked at the demographics for all of our subgroups in that year, we were doing really well. There was only one subgroup, our Asian subgroup, that was higher than the statewide average. They were 1.3%. The statewide was 1.1. And one of our biggest bright spots in that year's data, our African-American students' suspension rate was 1.1%. The statewide rate was 8.8. So that is reflective of some of the work that we've been doing as an organization and how we think about responding to student behavior. For last year, you can see our rate is creeping up. It is a preliminary 3.2%. We don't know what the state overall is, but I'm guessing they're also kind of experiencing that same gradual increase back to what we saw pre-COVID, where our rates range somewhere in the 3.5 to low 4s. So 405 total students were suspended last year. And when we talk about suspension in this data, we mean three things. There are classroom suspensions that teachers can give, there are in-school suspensions, and then there are out-of-school suspensions. They're all reflected here. So we always are looking for alternative means of correction when feasible. That's what the law requires. That's what our belief is philosophically. We don't want to just exclude kids because we can. And so we did track last year monthly all the instances where administrators applied some other means of correction to an ed code violation, and we had over 1,100 of those. I don't know why I use this funky language around specific modules. What I mean by that is assigning a specific lesson to a student that comes from one of our SEL programs. So if a student's struggling with boundaries or navigating social media, we have lessons we can plug them into that address that specific skill. Ripple Effects is one of those programs that we purchased. It has literally hundreds of different modules for different situations that we can assign kids to. Restorative conferences, there is a myth out there that like restorative justice is being soft on kids. I can tell you that there is hard work that goes into helping kids understand the impact of some of their actions and holding them accountable in ways that don't just mean you got a day off or 5 from school. Referrals to counseling or other resources. As you guys have seen and approved, we have contracts with some outside partners. If we have a student who has a problem with alcohol, they may get a referral to CADA. So it's not just excluding them, but trying to find a way to help them with the underlying issue. And then lastly, we're always going to be partnering with our parents and families and trying to address behavior and working in partnership with them. So talking about expulsion rates, this is another area that is not a concern for our district as an overall. We continue to have a very low rate of expulsion. In 22-23, we had 17 total expulsions in the district. Our overall rate was 0.1%, which was right in line with our county and the state. Last year we had 16, so we're relatively flat. The one area that I will point out that is of note and is concerning is that 16 of the 17 students who were expelled in 22-23 were Hispanic or Latino. So again, we do see that subgroup overrepresented here. And I'm not going to share disaggregated data before that's sort of publicly released, but we can expect that pattern is holding up for last year as well. And so with all of that, we invite any questions or comments from the board.
Any requests to speak on this item? Mr. Benning, no request to speak. Board members' comments. Oh, is there a request?
Sorry.
It's me. Oh, I want to thank both of you. You're awesome. Keep up the good work. I had a couple of things that came up for me and just highlighting kind of the teacher's perspective, because this is really important to us. There's something deeply, deeply heartbreaking about seeing that kids and teachers are reporting such low investment enthusiasm for school. I mean, 21% is abysmal. And we can't have any of the goals that we expressed earlier be met if kids aren't excited about learning and motivated. And so my request to the group working on this and the board is that we have the panoramic data where it says, oh, this is how I feel. But can we look for ways to get more specific data about the why? Why are you not motivated about school? Where are the highlights for the kids who do like it? What about school? You know, like, where is the data where we can dig into the why and publish that for folks so we can look for best practices? But also kind of recognizing that teaming up with SPTA and with teachers, we're the ones working with them, right? And asking us questions about where do you feel like there's the most enthusiasm, what types of lessons, and that all ties in with curriculum, what we adopt, how it's implemented. So I think the Panorama survey is great because now we have this small data point that's like, hey, this is the issue, but what are the plans moving forward for digging into that? And I hope teachers and our voices are amplified in that because we care just as much as everyone else, for sure. And we're part of that. I mean, we are the biggest part, right? They're with us. We got to keep them in there. And the second thought I had was, I mean, I think we can all agree suspensions don't work. Kids are already chronically absent. We can't keep removing them from the classroom. And what I saw and what I heard is there's all these alternatives to suspension. And my request to the group is this: where's the data about those alternatives? How many of those kids are reoccurring of that group of 1135? Which things were implemented? When did they work? How many are implemented before it escalates to suspension? I'm so curious about what that data says. Are all of those alternatives effective? I will tell you, I'm a deep believer in restorative approaches. And the last time I received any PD on it was like a decade ago. And I can tell you, I haven't seen it like super successfully implemented in a long time. For a lot of reasons. And yeah, I would love to see more data about that and those alternatives. And we need to know if it's the same student coming in again, how many of these alternatives were they? Are some of those alternatives more effective than others? And I think what teachers want to know is, when I fill out my ARIES, like this incident happened in class, right? I'm reporting it, I'm putting it in there. I refer the student to a dean. What happened in that meeting? What was the consequence? And why am I not being asked to be part of that story? You know, if we're calling home,
15
you know, what
seconds.
happens next? You know, there's no feedback loop for us. And so I just feel like we aren't a part of this story either, the story of keeping kids in school and the story of these consequences when these things happen, because I can send you to a meeting and you can get a module, but you have to come back to my class and we got to do it together. So thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
Any additional questions speak from the public?
This one.
Okay, thank you. Board members, comments and or questions? Ms. Bill.
So about the chronic absenteeism, we did hear some comments at the beginning of this meeting about safety concerns and that students didn't appear. And, you know, this disturbing thing about secondary school. And so I agree with the idea of closing the loop on that. Once again, I'll bring up that we always show this picture, the teachers and the students. And so I think there's information there that we're not getting that may help us. I know that when I looked at the percentages, mental health and kind of not being that motivated to go to school, but I'm curious, where is the mental health issue? Is it something that's going on in the student's life outside the school, or is there something occurring in the school that is affecting their mental health? Maybe you have that data, but how are you looking at it? And I agree that the teachers are having this direct contact, and there's information there that we are possibly missing. So addressing how we could get that information would be important. And I guess in the same way, I wasn't thinking of the suspensions in the same way, but it sounds like that is also something we should be looking at and getting some feedback.
Just to comment on that, and I'll yield to Mr. Shedler because this is his wheelhouse he oversees. Everything was correct that was said, and it's not just teachers, it's every adult on campus, which is why we really shifted to a focus of having a trauma-informed system and having folks at least have the lens of being trauma-informed and knowing the baseline of student behaviors. Students are with teachers every day. If anyone knows their baseline behavior, it's a teacher. And so when we start talking about school safety, safe schools have students who have at least 5 adults who know them by name, face, and story so that they can pick up when their behavior changes. Trauma-informed means I can look at your behavior and know that it's triggered by something other than what just happened in this moment. So those practices we're rolling out as an entire system for every adult, including teachers. As far as the mental health piece, we in SARB sit and have one-on-one conversations with families. We know at the root, you're looking at numbers and we know the stories behind those numbers. One of the things that we're implementing this year for the school sites to address learning from the dance floor, meaning every school getting a little bit more information, is the check-in modules on Panorama. We're doing system-wide data collection so that everyone has input from 3rd to 12th grade, all adults, all families have access. But to make that actionable in the moment for sites, we also added to Panorama the check-in module, so principals can send out check-ins at their sites. If something happened that was school-wide impact, they can check in with kids in real time. So giving the tools to make that work real is really important. When we bring our contracts, and I'll have John talk about that, know that data slide that I shared, that goes into how we contract. When we came to you and asked you to scale up our RISE program, which are the mental health clinicians, one of which was in here, Graciela, who was doing the work over at McKinley, it's because the data told us that that was necessary. And then I'll have them talk to the other means of correction and how do we assess our MOUs to either scale up or cut back.
Yeah, so she said a lot of what I was going to say about the mental health, which is it really gets to knowing what's going on with that particular student. And that can either come from the work the sites and the family engagement liaisons are doing, or if they make it all the way to SARB, we have mental health staff here at those meetings to get them connected and find out, do you have a therapist? Are you interested in seeing one? I mean, it is a barrier if they're not willing to come to school because our therapists are based out of the school, but we do have other resources like our Daybreak for teletherapy. We're doing outside referrals to a community resource. When we look at scaling up contracts, like the one that we brought for Santa Barbara High tonight around AVP, they want to do some additional work at their site. We looked at how did the AVP program work for kids last year? Like what was the rate of students having violent incidents after going through their workshops? It was quite low. I mean, very few students who went through that had another incident last year. So that speaks to effectiveness. We also looked at the data at the high school about what were the kinds of things that they were experiencing at Santa Barbara High, and that supported them having some additional services in that area. I don't know. Does that answer your question about how we kind of determine whether to scale up or maintain those contracts?
Yes, it kind of like, this is again, almost like this is a system we have and this is how we approach it and we scale up if we identify an area. But like I said, I'm just hearing a little bit of an undercurrent that, I mean, if I were, say, a teacher and I looked at that statistic, it would almost make me feel like, okay, my students don't want to be here, so now I don't feel like they're motivated. It's like a feedback loop. And so I think really I'm just talking about how can we get that feedback loop to work better where teachers feel like they understand, at least they get some direct feedback that this is, nobody's trying to divulge personal information. Other than what's necessary to protect a student, their safety. But at the same time, if there are small things or even large things that can be done at the school, that the teachers hear that and there's something in place. But then really that discussion, like it's just a little bit of a disconnect to hear comments that, like I said at the beginning of the meeting, that students are fearing for their safety and it's curtains and it's windows and it's glass. And if that's affecting their mental health or their ability to be at school, that seems fixable, right? So that's the loop I'm talking about.
Yeah, so a couple comments about the Panorama data. There's also context provided there, and we didn't cover it today, but we look at how those age groups compare nationally. So you can imagine students are maybe less enthusiastic about school as they go into junior high than they were when they were in kindergarten. And we can kind of norm that and see where's a realistic place that we want to be as a system. But some of that does get lost when we just share the data point without the context. It does also give us information on things that we can do as a system to bring those scores up. So if you're struggling with student engagement, what are some ideas that a school can do to try and raise that score? And they're not all going to work for every school, but there are a number of suggestions that are made through that platform. We also know that survey data is a point in time, and depending on what's going on in their community at that time, it's going to skew the numbers. So last year, San Marcos had I think it was their second administration of Panorama happened right around the same time that they had a lockdown on campus. And so it came out in the data. When there were open-ended questions, it was on kids' minds and they spoke to it. So it's just contextual stuff that we need to consider when we look at that. It's one kind of dipstick data point. We don't react to it, but we pause and consider it and think about what do we do next.
And to the point about knowing the students, we're presenting this from the balcony at the district level. But I have to highlight the work that's happening at the school sites on the ground level with their teams. So that's the family engagement liaison, the MTSS, TOSA, the principal, the nurse. They get together and they review students around attendance and look at what's happening in the student's life. So the comprehensive response of bringing everyone who owns a piece of that puzzle, and most importantly, the parents who are the people most knowledgeable about their students to the table to have an honest conversation. That goes back to having trusted adults and relationships with the school so that I feel comfortable to come in and share my most vulnerable realities with school staff and expect that there will be some support in place for me. So although that doesn't reflect in our data, I also want to let you know, we have counselors at our secondary schools, right? So we scaled up mental health clinicians. We have counselors at every school. So if anyone can have information about the student, it is those closest to the student at the school site. And they're doing some phenomenal work where we can have conversations about best practices that the principals talk about and the APs of climate culture talk about and the deans, which may not trickle down to a staff meeting at the school site, but that is the work that originates at the school site, which is organic, where the folks are closest to the students.
I have so many questions and thoughts about this this engagement question, because we've known this for ages about declining engagement from elementary school on up. And I have to wonder, what changes as the children go up, right? Well, for one thing, they stop having the single teacher all day long to having multiple teachers. They enter into adolescence where they start to become independent and are experimenting with the ideas of resistance and being unhappy and doing those kind of things. There's just all kinds of pieces of data. So it's really like looking for needles in haystacks, because for all of that you can explain away through circumstances and environment, there are way too many kids that have issues that we need to understand better to help. And that's why, the idea of the trusted adult, the counseling, the kind of things like that. Will we ever get rid of this? I don't think we'll ever get rid of the things that are built into it genetically or culturally, but what you're doing by looking at this is doing something for the children that we do find that there are things that we can help with. So thank you for the work that's going on, and I really appreciate it. I appreciate to hear about the good things, and I can empathize with the teachers that are looking at that, particularly in the upper grades, and thinking, my gosh, what can I do? And then I think when you talk to them, many of them have, if not all, have great success stories and things that they can go home feeling great about. And so this is really, really complex. But all I want to say after rambling is thank you for digging in and finding those needles in the haystack and looking for ways that we can support the kids when we do find things that are not just maybe part of culture and the environment. Thank you.
Ms. Munoz.
Yes, I'm certainly with, have a lot in common with Board Member Banning in terms of how complex this is and having worked with youth. I appreciate all that you do, the integrated wellness approach and like the social emotional learning lessons I think are great. I know that when we discuss cases, in closed session, like, the students, what's going on. And there's a lot of communication that goes on behind the scenes. The implementation data with the alternatives to suspension is wonderful. The 135 instances where other things, alternatives happen, I think is just notable from when I first started on the board. It's really increased. So I'm very pleased with that. And all that is there for our students. It's not, there's so much that goes on in their lives that this is just a piece of it. But thank you. Thank you for what everyone does and for the teachers and the school staff that are out there every day. Thank you.
Additional comments, board members? So yes, I just add thank you for this presentation. And I'll take a step back. When I first came on this board, the system that we are now putting into place. In terms of how we respond, what we're doing, the questions we're asking. So it is a continuous improvement. And 8 years ago, there was a different world. 8 years ago, we wouldn't have had mental health centers be on the campuses. 8 years ago, we wouldn't have had these things because we have heard those things with regards to that. And as Mr. Banning said, it's been going on for a long time, but it's how we're moving to adapt and change and get the resources exactly where they need to go. And we're dealing with teenagers mostly. I mean, we definitely want to make sure we're not leaving out our young folks as well. But I want to say, when the teenagers are going through so many things, how do we get them to be motivated? What's unmotivating you today? So continue to have that. So I want to also recognize Santa Barbara Unified, everybody that's been a part of making us get to this change today. 8 years ago, the level of suspensions were out the roof. I got to tell you, every time I look at a report, we come and we had a couple pages of if we were going to, suspend somebody, or we're going to suspend, or we're going to, they're going to be on a suspended, expulsion. And so it has changed, and I know it's exacerbated right now because it's focused and it's highlighted on that. But I want to remind us of the work that everybody's doing. So Ms. Anthony, you said about teachers, we want to be able to know that. So the more that we're hearing that, how can we improve this system of care? It is a system of care, because 8 years ago, it was piecemeal and everybody's trying to do what they need to do. And we wouldn't dare even norm that you could go somewhere else and talk to someone, because they don't trust everybody. So I want us to remind us of the work that has been put into place to get us to this space right now. And I know that we still need to work on the disproportion of with regards to suspicion, but I tell you, so it's important to make those connections of change and a positive change. It's easy to say what's wrong, but it's important to say there's less wrong today than it was 8 years ago, because of the things that we're doing, because of the changes. And I say we have together to keep doing that. When people are coming and suggesting those things, how do we then integrate that in our system? Oh, that's something to think about. I know even the suspension groups, the board is working with who's at that suspension group, what other support needs. So there's a lot of change. I want to make sure we recognize it, and not always looking at it from a negative perspective of not supporting our students. Is how do we do that? And that takes, just as it has taken us to get to this point, to change it from what it was 8 years ago. And the world is different, way different than it was COVID. I know we don't want to keep that. We had those problems, but COVID really highlighted what we had to change, what we needed to focus on what we're doing. We had to do it differently. So I would look differently now at a site safety plan. So things that came in today, you're telling me that the curtains and all that. Okay, so I'm going to look at that on a site safety plan. This is what's coming here. So I'm going to look at that plan. So that's even different. That's going to be more informed. It's going to be a much more detail of how you're going to address those things. Do you know that these things are happening, and how do we reinforce at the site? Start there first. How do we reinforce support that may be needed? Now, obviously that's a district, that's a level in terms of perhaps either changing the policy, amending the policy to do those things, but it starts there at the site level. And I want us to really recognize the change that has happened. And it is a better space for our children and our teachers. It may not be perfect, because we continue to work on that. So I want to make sure, let's recognize the hard work that everybody's doing to get it to this space. And, you start to look at all the schools. I've been at several schools and just coming, and looking and observing how students are responding to it. And we will always have that few that need that more intense help. And as you did the tiers today. So that's kind of where it is. All students, more support and more intensive support. So how do we do that? So I want to recognize, I appreciate this report. Certainly we can improve on, how we're looking at the data and how we can improve on the feedback level. So how are we connecting those pieces? Yeah, I might have missed it, but it's being recorded. So here's these things that we want to be better at connecting, these issues. And certainly those things get highlighted when we are right now, we're in a time of, of safety concerns. They don't leave. They're always there. They get highlighted, right? And we often don't say what we're doing right, but we certainly know that it's a continuous improvement in terms of making sure that our schools are safe, people feel safe, our students safe, and certainly our parents know that their children, when they send them to to the district and when they send them to our schools, that they are safe. So I want to make sure, remind us that let's continue to look at what we're doing well, continue to looking at an improvement, using data to guide our decision and to approve what we need to do. So thank you for the report. Thank you for the public comments. Again, that helps us continue to improve. Thank you. So board members, we are now moving to the agenda. I know we have a request to speak on item K1. The coming events are there. I don't, if we have any questions, they're there in on your agenda to see what's upcoming in our next board meetings. And so we will move to the future agenda items, and we do have a request to speak on that. Thank you.
Kim Tilton.
I just wanted to ask, like, propose.
Kim, can you move that down so we can hear you? Are you on? Is it on?
Okay.
All right.
So I was looking at it
Mm.
and I had a request because in September, one of the goals was that it was in the superintendent direction for the district. You know, they shared their mission, the vision, the plan. But then you look on the calendar and all the proposals for the superintendent and the direction of the district are just LCAP plans. And they don't start until, I think, the spring. And my request is this. What I heard and what I keep hearing is this conversation about trust. And for me, it's not this amorphous thing where we need to sit at a meeting, this is a true story, and say, hey, how are we going to build trust? It's not amorphous. Trust comes from communication and competency. And when my leader sets out goals, they can model what that looks like by making a plan to share their progress towards those goals, show me the data that they're collecting, and model SMART goals for us. So I would love it if part of the plan for that piece of the calendar for the superintendent would be sharing progress towards those goals, what data is being collected to basically reflect on that progress for those goals. And I would submit this. All I know as a staff member at this point is that I received a survey at the beginning of the year that asked me to rank departments. What was interesting about it is it didn't have a section for each individual department on the website. The way that it was organized, I was actually kind of like rating ETS while also rating another like group of people that aren't ETS. But the questions on it were literally like, how respected do you feel by this department? I'm like, how is this in any way useful data? Like we already know that these are issues, and B, what could someone do with that? Oh, 25% of people feel respected by ETS. You know, that type of feedback is not the kind of feedback that you would need to achieve goals around trust, in my opinion. And what we've been asking for is what we used to have, which are opportunities for staff members at all levels to give feedback on like individual groups of people and projects and departments. That isn't about how I feel, but literally like, my interactions with the person, like, do I feel like they're getting their job done? Do I feel like they're competent? Do I feel like they've responded to my needs? How can you know whether people are responding to needs if it's categorized in these like massive departments? It's a long story, but check out the survey and ask yourself, does this seem like it would be useful? And if it's going to give data, that's going to be useful. And maybe ask if we can have some reflection and continuations of those goals and that mission, because I would like to hear it. Honestly, I think that would be great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the comment. And we do look at public comment and figure out where we're going to move and what needs to be best for all. And so thank you for your comments, and we will certainly take those things into consideration. Thank you for staying with us through this evening. So that really couldn't you, Ms. Bill?
I don't know if I somehow missed it, but we talked, we have our section 9, which was actually in the regular section board comments. And I just have an announcement. Am I allowed to do
Yes.
that? Okay. So it's just a short, quick announcement that the Counselor Advisory Council at Dos Pueblos. So every high school and maybe other schools have these advisory counselors for the counselors, and they meet twice a year. Oh, okay. let me correct myself. So Dos Pueblos Counselor Advisory Council, which meets twice a year, has asked me to be a part of the council. Principal Woodard will be there and Miss Ewert, I have not met this person, along with the counselors, to talk about counseling the students and whatever changes they might want to make. So they invited me to join and I will be attending those meetings. So I just want to announce that publicly.
Okay, and we just want to make sure as we're invited to do that, that we're real clear in our role there. And so as a board member, the role, there's expectations that change. So I just want to, remind us as board members, certainly want to be a part of it, but realizing what our role is there and the expectation of when we're there. So it's really important to make that distinction. So we are always happy to be invited, but we want to make sure that we understand what our role is there and the folks that are in the room understand the role of the board member. Because sometimes there's an expectation that by being present, there's going to be some action toward that. So just in terms of those pieces, it may be just we're sitting on advisory board. So I just wanted to remind the board members because sometimes that can get confusing and we don't want folks upset with an expectation that hasn't been clear. So thank you for that. And then Mr. Wood is going to be there. So we're going to make sure that we're letting our principals know when we're going to be attending.
Yeah, I'll follow up with. Yes, we talked about it and I'll follow up. It's only 2 times and it's for the ASCA model, which is a national model for counselors. But I will follow up and check in with Mr. Woodard. Maybe I'll sit in on the meeting as well, just to kind of ensure we have that. But it's only 2 meetings a year.
Yep. Just want to make sure we're clearing as we're building trust, transparency, and understanding where we're supposed to be so we don't have confusion. With that, if there's no additional comments and or questions, thank you for this meeting. I will now adjourn us till Tuesday, October 8th. Thank you.